The silhouette that Yunxi saw in front of her looked conceited, filled with arrogance, the arrogance of the aristocracy. The silhouette that Yunxi saw in front of her looked conceited, filled with arrogance, the arrogance of the aristocracy. Du Gushang was a rich and powerful person. Du Gushang had heard about Lin Feng's achievements. People were talking about him everywhere. He had even just heard that people were comparing him with Lin Feng. Surprisingly, there were people who dared say that Lin Feng was better than him, like Yunxi. Du Gushang was in a bad mood because of that. What kind of person did this girl think he was? In the entire Celestial Academy, he was always practicing at the top of that tower. Nobody dared to take his position, even the second in the ranking, Qiong Bai Luo, and the third one, Ao Shui. Du Gushang thought that because they had never had conflicts, he was different and better than them. He respected Lin Feng even less. For him, comparing him with Lin Feng was a humiliation. Why couldn't I compare you with Lin Feng? As I see it, Lin Feng is better than you, said Yunxi when she heard that Du Gushang was criticizing Lin Feng, which made Du Gushang furious. Shut the hell up, he shouted. Smack! At that moment a loud sound filled the air. Yunxi had been slapped in the face, not by Du Gushang but by one of the girls who was with her. Yunxi, you shut the hell up. Du Gushang is much better than Lin Feng. In front of Du Gushang, Lin Feng is mere trash, a nobody, said the girl extremely coldly. Her words and actions were harsh. When Du Gushang saw that, a big arrogant smile appeared on his face. Indeed, in front of him Lin Feng was a nobody. At that moment, about 100 meters away from them, a handsome silhouette had appeared. They raised their head and looked at the tall and majestic tower. That young man was precisely the one they were discussing, Lin Feng. Lin Feng then slowly turned his head and looked at Du Gushang and the others. He wanted to go to the cultivation tower and practice there until the end of the year. Then he would go back to Yangzhou City, but at that moment on the road many people were talking about him. Even at the bottom of the tower some people were arguing about him. Lin Feng heard every word already, but he couldn't be bothered with them. He didn't feel like going and proving anything to them. They were not worth his time. Many people were talking about him. He couldn't care about everyone. Nature would take its course. But at that moment, a girl was protecting his reputation and had been slapped in the face for defending him. She was being humiliated. Lin Feng frowned. Yunxi, tonight I will sleep with you. After that we won't talk of this again and I will not punish you, said Du Gushang, sounding extremely arrogant. How ridiculous. It was difficult for him to get a woman with his ugly face. He was interested in Yunxi, but if he had said it clearly, it would have been giving her face. But she surprisingly dared say that she found Lin Feng better than him, therefore, he would teach her the power of a noble over the course of the night. Yunxi was stupefied. She was looking at that ugly and disgusting guy who wanted to take advantage of her. It would rather be an honor and a favor for her to sleep with him. What a shameless young man. He thought that he could freely humiliate those beneath him. In fact, it was really that way. Du Gushang really thought he could humiliate anyone as he wished, except for a few exceptions. If you don't reply, I will just help myself, said Du Gushang with a particularly evil smile on his face. Yunxi's facial expression changed again. She turned deathly pale. What a disgusting and hideous man. However, she also felt powerless. Not only did he have a very high status, but he had also broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer. Relying on his cultivation level and physical strength, he could easily capture her by force and use her as his toy. Yunxi, Du Gushang is giving you a great opportunity. You are lucky. You'd be really shameless if you made him lose face, said the mean girl, trying to flatter Du Gushang at the same time. Yunxi looked even paler. Being sexually assaulted by Du Gushang for an entire night, and then abandoned, was a stroke of luck? The mean girl was shameless. You're so young and already so cheap. You are one promiscuous flower, said a voice interrupting them. It sounded cold and detached. It shocked the mean girl. She turned around and immediately saw a handsome young man. She frowned and said, Who are you talking to? Last time she hadn't seen Mo and Lin Feng's battle, so she couldn't recognize him. Apart from you, is there another cheap and trashy girl here? Asked Lin Feng in the tone of a joke. With those kind of girls, the only solution was to be harsher than them. The mean girl was stupefied, but Yunxi suddenly seemed happy. She was blankly staring at the young man in front of her. It was Lin Feng. Surprisingly, it was Lin Feng. Lin Feng had heard her and come to her rescue. As before, he looked natural and unrestrained, but in comparison with before, he looked more mysterious and had a heroic spirit. Du Gushang frowned as well. He didn't recognize Lin Feng either. Last time during the battle between Heimo and Lin Feng, even though almost everybody had seen it, Du Gushang despised Heimo, so he didn't go to watch his battle. "Why don't you mind your own business?" said Du Gushang, who looked like he was in a joking mood. Lin Feng coldly looked at Du Gushang. Immediately after, he shook his head in disdain. That guy didn't know him yet, he was talking behind his back. Lin Feng despised these types of filthy people and attached no importance to them. Lin Feng looked at the mean girl and said, "I understand that for you, a one-night stand with anyone is a stroke of luck. And since it is about giving face, it's clear that you have given a great deal of face, and so you are very lucky." Lin Feng was speaking loudly and clearly so that everybody could hear. Then, everybody looked at her and laughed. What she said was indeed utterly ridiculous. She was really shameless. "I'm talking to you," said Du Gushang, whose voice was sounding colder and colder. Lin Feng surprisingly wasn't paying attention to him. Du Gushang had a prestigious social status. How could Lin Feng ignore him in front of everybody? Lin Feng slowly turned around and said to Du Gushang, "Do I know you?" Du Gushang was astonished and then smiled coldly. "I of course don't know you, so you most likely don't know me either. People who know me don't dare ignore me. What's your name?" "You overestimate yourself," said Lin Feng while smiling, and continued, "Even though I don't know you, I unfortunately heard your unsavory name, which is normal considering that you show off in front of everybody, Du Gushang." "Huh." Du Gushang narrowed his eyes. Lin Feng surprisingly knew who he was but still dared act that way towards him. "Since you know who I am, I will show you my methods. Slap your own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times. Once you're done, I will forgive all of your mistakes from today." Du Gushang sounded cold and was releasing oppressing energy. His mouth was filled with endless arrogance and coldness. He thought that releasing a little bit of qi and force would be enough to make Lin Feng collapse. However, Lin Feng was calmly standing there, motionless, with a cold smile on his face. His facial expression hadn't changed at all. It actually seemed like Lin Feng hadn't sensed the oppressive energy at all. "Slap my own face? Kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times? Lin Feng raised his head and slowly walked towards Du Gushang. Du Gushang was surprised and released more and more of his qi. "With so little qi and force, don't you think that you're making a fool of yourself?" said Lin Feng, making the whole crowd look on while astonished. What an insane guy, humiliating Du Gushang. Besides, Lin Feng was a military student, so his fellow military students were all excited, especially since Du Gushang was a political student. "You can only talk big," said Du Gushang, who released an even stronger energy which pressures the entire atmosphere. Around Lin Feng's body appeared sword qi. It was extremely powerful. His entire body was like a sword, extremely sharp. The crowd was astonished. Their hearts were pounding. These energies were terrifying. Was this the same Lin Feng who had fought against Heimo? Du Gushang also started shaking violently. He was stupefied by Lin Feng. Du Gushang also started shaking violently. He was stupefied by Lin Feng. How is this possible? How could you be so strong? Du Gushang couldn't believe it his eyes. He had never seen Lin Feng. Besides, he was so young. At that moment he was releasing sword energy. The energy looked extremely solid and thick. At the academy there wasn't such a strong student. While Du Gushang's heart was pounding, Lin Feng had arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye. The earth fusion wasn't only embodied by Lin Feng's swordplay. It also affected Lin Feng's speed. He had broken through to a special cultivation dimension. Since he was in perfect symbiosis with the earth, he could move using the power of the earth. Wow! Du Gushang's body was blown away. A large red mark appeared on his face. The mark was from an open hand slap. The crowd was stupefied. How scary! He was a cultivator of the 8th Ling Qi layer, and he was also ranked 4th amongst the top disciples of the academy. Surprisingly, he couldn't withstand a single slap from Lin Feng and was sent flying. The mean girl was also astonished. Her mouth was wide open. She looked as if she had seen something absolutely extraordinary. Du Gushang, who was extremely powerful and influential, had been slapped in the face by a young man. Who was he? Yunxi looked happy and amazed. Lin Feng was so frivolous and unruly. The view of Du Gushang getting slapped was even more shocking than seeing Heimo being defeated. Alright. He deserves to be one of the military students, These students in governmental affairs can only talk big, but in reality, they cannot withstand a single blow, said the people in the crowd. As expected, many people couldn't stand Du Gushang. Du Gushang's facial expression was terrifying. He looked like an injured animal. He was looking at Lin Feng in an ice-cold way and said, "Who are you?" "Me," said Lin Feng while pointing at himself, and then immediately said, sounding cold and detached, "I am a nobody, I cannot rival you," said Lin Feng in the tone of a joke. Yunxi giggled. She couldn't help but burst into laughter. If Lin Feng was a nobody, what was Du Gushang? A nobody? For a moment Du Gushang didn't understand. Then he heard some people laugh who were saying how ridiculous, he was making fun of him, saying that he couldn't rival with him, but now that he's facing him, he got slapped silly and cannot even withstand a single blow. If I were him, I wouldn't in the Imperial City. I would get the hell out of here and run as far as I could go. When Du Gushang heard that person making fun of him, a hideous expression appeared on his face. Lin Feng. He finally understood, thanks to that person who was making fun of him. The one who had just slapped him was Lin Feng. He had just said that Lin Feng couldn't rival him. At that moment the mean girl was shaking. Lin Feng, that was Lin Feng. Actually, he was much stronger than Du Gushang. "You will regret what you did today," threatened Du Gushang, sounding cold and detached. Immediately after, he turned around and started leaving. He had been humiliated, he couldn't stay there. Wait, said Lin Feng in a cold tone. Du Gushang thus stopped and slowly turned around. He then looked at Lin Feng in a cold way. "Are you thinking of leaving like that?" said Lin Feng as if he was amused. "What do you want?" said Du Gushang, who was surprised. Would Lin Feng dare to continue? "A moment ago you wanted me to slap my own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times in front of you. Now, you found out that you are much weaker than me. Do you think that you can leave that easily?" Lin Feng made it sound like he had no choice but to follow Du Gushang's lead and continued. "What kind of person do you think I am?" When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they got excited. They wanted to see what Lin Feng would do to Du Gushang. "Show me how it is done. Slap your own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times in front of me," said Lin Feng, sounding imposing, domineering, and whose voice was even colder. His smile had disappeared, and his tone had become sharp like his sword. "You want me to slap my own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times in front of you?" said Du Gushang, who couldn't believe it. Lin Feng dared request such a thing from him? "It seems that when I speak, people like you think they can ignore me. Therefore I will have to do it myself," said Lin Feng in a low voice. Suddenly he rushed forward like a madman. His silhouette vanished in a flash. Without hesitation, he unleashed an attack. Du Gushang's heart was pounding. How fast was Lin Feng? In a flash, Lin Feng had arrived in front of him and Lin Feng's finger was pointing at him. The tip of his finger was filled with sword qi, and it suddenly rushed towards Du Gushang at incredible speed. Hastily, Du Gushang raised his fist to block the attack, but suddenly, a long and horrible shriek filled the air. Du Gushang's face suddenly turned deathly pale. His fist had been impaled by Lin Feng's finger. Whap! Lin Feng slapped Du Gushang once more and the sound echoed through the atmosphere. Whap! 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 Oh! Lin Feng was unceasingly slapping Du Gushang's face. The crowd was watching, blankly staring at that scene. Du Gushang's arrogant face was going through a thorough beating and his heart was filling with coldness. Du Gushang had been ignorant. Lin Feng was playing with him as if he was a toy. Lin Feng was violently slapping his face in front of everyone. "Since I have to do it myself, there is an extra fee included." When Lin Feng stopped talking, 2 loud sounds successively filled the atmosphere. Du Gushang was kneeling down and crawling on the ground and kowtowing in front of Lin Feng. He was extremely proud and usually so arrogant. This was a huge humiliation for him. His heart was pounding and he was sweating cold sweat. What a cruel guy. "If I am a nobody who cannot rival you, what are you doing kneeling down and kowtowing me?" said Lin Feng in a disdainful way while glaring at Du Gushang, who was crawling on the ground. Du Gushang had just broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer. When facing a cultivator in the Earth Fusion dimension, he basically couldn't withstand a single finger. Lin Feng had already fought against cultivators of the Xian Qi layer, and nearly killed one. Du Gushang lowered his head. His heart was filled with endless hatred and wrath. A moment later, a foot pressed against his lower jaw and he heard Lin Feng's cold voice. "Get lost." Lin Feng only said these 2 words and Du Gushang's body was sent flying away. Lin Feng didn't look at him anymore. He then turned to Yunxi, warmly smiled at her and said, "If you want me to take care of her, I'll immediately handle her." By her, Lin Feng obviously meant the mean girl. At that moment the mean girl was shaking and her heart was pounding. Yunxi just said in a cold and detached way in the tone of a joke, "It's best not to touch such filthy people." "Alright, forget it then, I don't like touching them either," said Lin Feng while laughing softly. Immediately after, he pointed at the 5th room of Cultivation Tower. It was empty. It was the place Du Gushang had seized. "You want to go into the Cultivation Tower?" Yunxi shivered. She looked at Lin Feng and said in a soft voice, "I cannot go in." "I'll help you," said Lin Feng while smiling. He grabbed her hand and started walking. Immediately after, Lin Feng jumped into the air. Yunxi was having a panic attack. She closed her eyes in fear and she could barely open them. She realized that she was high in the air and flying. Her heart was pounding from fear of falling. Then she looked at the handsome young man on her side, and her heart was filled with endless softness and tenderness. What an amazing agility technique, thought the crowd when they saw Lin Feng and the girl. He was high up in the air, how powerful. When he arrived high in the air, Lin Feng stood on the energy from the atmosphere and started walking on the invisible force. Lin Feng and Yunxi shot across the sky like an arrow and landed on the 5th room of the Cultivation Tower, which was a few hundred meters in the air. When Yunxi saw the small silhouettes on the ground beneath the tower, she had the impression she was in a dream and nothing was real. "Train hard," said Lin Feng while smiling at Yunxi. Immediately after, he moved again and was immediately on the 3rd room. He immediately entered in a room. There was nobody in the 3rd room either. It belonged to the death god Wen Ao Shui. Lin Feng obviously could use the room if he pleased. If there had been nobody in the other rooms, he would have gone there as well, regardless of who they belonged to. Concerning Yunxi, when she saw Lin Feng move away, her dream to practice in that cultivation tower had become reality, but she wasn't excited. In her heart, she felt like she had lost something. Everything was like a dream, but that natural, unrestrained and frivolous young man was just a passerby. He was so outstanding that she would only be able to look up at him in the sky, spreading his wings and flying away. What Yunxi didn't know was that, at that moment, the 2 girls with whom she had come with were still down on the ground and were jealous of her. They envied her because having the opportunity to practice in that tower was something that they were all yearning for. Concerning the mean girl, at that moment her heart was filled with regret. The people in the crowd had different facial expressions. Lin Feng seemed to be a person that nobody could prevent from moving forwards. At that moment, nothing of what had happened was present in Lin Feng's heart. At that moment, in his heart and thoughts, there were only 3 things: the strong cultivator's memories that were separated into 3 parts. They were all extremely powerful. The surplus souls technique could divide the soul into many surplus souls filled with extreme power. The power to control the 10,000 things of creation. The surplus souls technique could divide the soul into many surplus souls filled with extreme power. The power to control the 10,000 things of creation. Lin Feng was drowned in these memories. He was inspecting the martial skills and agility techniques that the Zun cultivator had been using. They were extremely powerful. There were also things about fabricating weapons and concocting pills. They required the usage of surplus souls. After he learned how to master the surplus souls technique and having to strengthening his soul, then it was possible to practice the other techniques. Everything would be easier to learn with a stronger soul. Besides, the power to control energy would be enhanced. Therefore, Lin Feng, after analyzing the situation, had decided to practice the surplus souls technique. Before being able to learn how to use surplus souls, Lin Feng had to first comprehend the soul and how it functioned. It would enable him to have a clear and distinct perception of the existence of his soul. It would enable him to pierce through the mysteries of the soul. He would be able to transfer his thoughts directly into his soul. This was, however, the most basic step. The technique included a method to visualize the soul and understand its complexities. Besides, Lin Feng had access to the Earth fusion dimension and had a strong power of comprehension. He only needed a few days to master the method of visualizing his soul. Lin Feng didn't know that the strong cultivator during his training had required 2 years to be able to see his soul. Lin Feng could do it in such a short time thanks to the Earth fusion, and because his soul was already very powerful. At that moment in Lin Feng's mind, He could see a dark illusion of himself, as if it was his dark self, a black silhouette, as if was the essence of his soul. In his previous life, Lin Feng didn't dare to imagine looking at a spirit. On the path of cultivation, it was said that after dying, one could see their own soul. Besides, it was also said that it was possible to transfer the power of the souls. The second step of the technique of the surplus souls was the spirit movement. It was about comprehending the soul on a much higher level. It was about being able to control the soul and move it to your will, otherwise it wouldn't be possible to use the surplus soul and it would be useless. In comparison with the first step, which was also about understanding the soul, Lin Feng found the second step was much easier. He was quickly able to achieve the spirit movement and even managed to make his soul leave his body and move as a spirit. The third step of the technique of the surplus souls was the incomplete soul. It was the most critical step. This step was different from the two others. The incomplete soul was the main part of the technique which made it so powerful. This step was extremely important. While practicing cultivation, the soul would separate into many surplus souls, 1 or 2, but a strong cultivator could obtain 100 or 1,000 surplus souls. The most terrifying cultivators who existed could obtain billions of surplus souls to an almost endless number. The strength of the soul was as vast and powerful as the universe. Lin Feng was sitting cross-legged. At that moment in the air there was a shadow floating in the atmosphere. If somebody had been there and could see that shadow, they would have realized that it looked like a perfect double for Lin Feng. That was Lin Feng's soul. At that moment, Lin Feng closed his eyes and took a deep breath. There was an image in Lin Feng's hand. He then exhaled and said in a low voice, "Split." After that, an invisible strength spread through his body and a violent pain overcame all of his senses. He started shaking and his heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. How painful! Lin Feng had the feeling he was being cut into pieces by 1,000 swords. The pain was similar to when his celestial spirit was awakened. Lin Feng immediately fainted. He couldn't stand the intense pain that filled his consciousness. At that moment, Lin Feng felt another pain within his soul. Lin Feng's soul started to struggle. A small black piece was reluctantly torn from Lin Feng's soul. That black piece turned into a surplus soul. At that moment, Lin Feng's body was shaking and shivering. He was agonizing. The pain was unreal. Finally, the surplus soul was formed and floated in the air. It was a very small part of Lin Feng's soul. His entire body was covered with a cold sweat. Lin Feng couldn't help but smile wryly. Practicing cultivation required an infinite amount of determination. He had only managed to make a single surplus soul. The technique of the surplus souls was revered, but many cultivators wouldn't dare practice it because of the risks. If a cultivator wanted to divide his spirit into 1,000 surplus souls, he had to endure terrible pain for each soul. Besides, there was still a chance that it could fail and not form a surplus soul. Sometimes they would even stop when splitting their soul as the pain was too much. Only those who had an iron determination could practice such techniques. Without determination and willpower, the body and the mind would not be able to handle such incredible pain. Lin Feng's heart fluctuated again. That small black surplus soul floating in the air moved towards the whole soul. They seemed to be in harmony with each other as if they were connected. Yet they remained separate. Lin Feng calmly took a few breaths, which allowed him to calm down. His heart started to violently pound again as his body became tense. This was what it took to understand the soul. Suddenly a new surplus soul appeared. With an incredible strength, it was possible to reach the heavens to receive other people's worship, but how difficult was it? One had to go through incredible pain, but to what extent? Only those with an indestructible willpower and determination could reach the heavens, and were able to reach great achievements. The Zun layer cultivator could kill millions of people and be worshipped, while a weak cultivator could only get bullied and humiliated. For example, during the war Han Mo and Yin Yu Pingsheng had appeared, they could kill a few thousand soldiers very easily. With them involved, it was easy to determine the outcome of a battle. One attack carried out by them from the sky could annihilate an endless amount of soldiers on the ground. A melody from a zither could leave the battlefield littered with corpses. These people were extremely strong. Lin Feng needed to become stronger. He needed to reach the heavens and have the power to kill anyone who would bully him. Lin Feng wasn't aware of how much time had elapsed. At that moment, outside of the tower there were many people who were calmly waiting. Amongst them was a from the government of the imperial city. Lin Feng's titles were ready and he could receive them officially. But he was still in the cultivation room, which could not be disturbed. The person sent by the government didn't leave, he also didn't disturb Lin Feng. He was only waiting there calmly. He didn't look impatient or annoyed at all. Many people were waiting outside of the cultivation tower as well and were surprised. That person had already arrived a few days back, and was surprisingly still waiting for Lin Feng. Lin Feng was really prestigious. That person from the government didn't even dare to disturb Lin Feng in his cultivation room. He was waiting there even though he didn't know how much time Lin Feng would need before being done with his practice. At that moment, when looking up at the majestic tower, more precisely at the fourth room, the door of the closed cultivation room started moving and slowly opened itself. The crowd was stupefied. A silhouette came out of it. That silhouette immediately jumped in the air, and at the moment when it fell down to the ground, an invisible energy emerged and positioned itself to cushion the shock. The silhouette gently landed on the ground. That person was wearing a long gown, carrying an ancient sword on his back. It was precisely Lin Feng. When the person from the imperial city saw him come down, they smiled and went towards him while saying, "Lin Feng, Your Highness has asked us to come and hand this certificate to you which certifies your titles. From now on, you are the owner of Yangzhou City." After that, the person handed over a certificate to Lin Feng which was purple and gold in color. "Thank you and sorry for the trouble," said Lin Feng while receiving his certificate. It was written in big and majestic characters, "Wuxia Officer Marquis Yangzhou City Fief. You're welcome. I have fulfilled my duty. I'm leaving now." That person smiled again and immediately turned around as they abruptly left. That person had been waiting there for a few days to personally deliver the titles to Lin Feng. Lin Feng packed up his titles and smiled. He turned around and looked at a person who was glaring at him. It was Du Gushang who was staring at him with an evil look. On that day, after having been humiliated by Lin Feng, he had gone back to his clan to bring people to kill Lin Feng, but his clan refused to fight against Lin Feng. In the future, his clan forbade him from causing Lin Feng any trouble. Written on Lin Feng's robe was a name, Duan Wuya. If he killed Lin Feng, he had to remember that he was part of Duan Wuya's faction. Even though Du Gushang hated him, he still had no say in the matter. If he didn't receive the help of his clan, relying on his own strength, he couldn't kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng raised his head, looked at another room of the cultivation tower. The door was still closed. Yunxi was probably still inside. "Du Gushang, if anything happens to her, no one can save you," said Lin Feng extremely coldly. Deadly qi was released from his body. Du Gushang was astonished and terrified. He was shaking. Lin Feng had only said a few words, but it had been enough to terrify him. Du Gushang's facial expression was extremely ugly. He really wanted to teach Yunxi a lesson. But Lin Feng was threatening him. Besides, being threatened by Lin Feng was a new humiliation. His cheeks were burning. Everybody was looking at him and laughing. "Don't forget what I said Lin Feng indifferently. Immediately after, he left. The end of the year was approaching. Lin Feng had to go back to Yangzhou City. On an ancient road, there were many people on horses galloping towards Yangzhou City. On an ancient road, there were many people on horses galloping towards Yangzhou City. Galloping on the ancient road was notably one girl. She was wearing a red chongpao. She looked powerful and was also very beautiful. Her eyes revealed her arrogance. "Qian, this time when we arrive in Yangzhou City, you will be able to demonstrate your extraordinary talents and abilities. Everybody in the clan will be extremely proud of you." At that moment, a young man said that to girl in the red chongpao. He looked excited. That young man was Lin Hong. Next to Lin Hong was Lin Qian, his sister. Everybody in the Lin clan was proud to be associated with Lin Qian. These days, Lin Qian had become more mature. The qi emerging from her body was extraordinary. 1 year in the imperial city had enabled Lin Qian to advance from the first Ling qi layer to break through to the fourth Ling qi layer. She was a real genius. She had gone through such difficult training to accomplish those results. Lin Qian wanted to become a dragon amongst mortals. She was arrogant and wanted to look down on other people from above. Such a personality required her to have a strict determination in order to unceasingly become stronger. "Brother, you are also quite strong. There aren't many who can rival with you in Yangzhou City." said Lin Qian calmly. The sound of her voice floated in the wind and reached Lin Hong's ears, which made a smile appear on his face. After having acquired both wealth and prestige, they were going back to their hometown where everybody would be proud of them. Qian, I'm still too weak in comparison with you, said Lin Hong while smiling. Actually, she was indeed much stronger than him. Besides, one of the 8 high officials, Chu Zhanpeng, was interested in her, which made a lot of people envious. Lin Qian and her friends were all disciples of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, and they were more talented than Lin Hong, but he was happily following his sister in the group. Chu Zhanpeng was their source of inspiration. Lin Feng was the piece of trash that the Lin clan expelled. The last time they saw him, he was extremely strong. They hadn't seen him for a while, but no doubt that he had become even stronger. Lin Qian didn't know about Lin Feng's new title of Marquis. Lin Hong and her had been practicing in a cultivation room until the annual meeting. They wanted to be as strong as possible when they went back to Yangzhou City. Right after leaving her cultivation room, she jumped on horseback and rushed to Yangzhou City. On the same ancient road, there was another girl wearing fire-red clothes. She was also riding a horse and rushing to Yangzhou City. Na Lanfeng looked at the young man next to her. She was smiling softly and tenderly. "Dugu, thank you for accompanying me to Yangzhou City," said Na Lanfeng. She was a girl in love. Dugu Xiao was a member of the Dugu clan. The Dugu clan was a clan tied to the imperial court. He had powerful connections. Besides, he was also extremely powerful. He was Na Lanfeng's boyfriend. Na Lanfeng and Dugu Xiao had been in a relationship for 2 years now, but it was secret. Na Lanfeng didn't take offense though, because she was proud to be Dugu Xiao's girlfriend and she was in love. Na Lanfeng was the daughter of the Na Lan clan of Yangzhou. But in comparison with the Dugu clan, who had ministers within the court, the Na Lan clan was nothing. They were not even worth looking at. Na Lanfeng knew this was the case, but Dugu Xiao had accepted to go accompany her to Yangzhou City, which was giving her a great deal of face. She was very touched by him accompanying her. "We've been together for so long, I told you I will help you rise through the social ladder," said Dugu Xiang calmly. Na Lanfeng looked delighted. Obtaining a higher social status was her biggest ambition. "Iya!" Na Lanfeng urged on her horse, which dashed faster, making her long hair and red clothes flutter in the wind. Her heart was galloping at full speed, just like the horse. "Lin Qian of the Lin clan, I wonder if you can fight against me?" Na Lanfeng looked extremely impatient. This time in Yangzhou City, everybody would see Dugu Xiao escorting her and would be surprised. At that moment, Lin Qian and Na Lanfeng were going back to Yangzhou City as heroes and expected everyone to worship them. They thought that everybody was going to consider them as goddesses. Lin Qian and Na Lanfeng didn't know that, at the moment when they had already been traveling for a while, rushing over to Yangzhou City, outside of the imperial city, 2 extremely precious dragon-colt horses had just departed. There was a handsome young man and a beautiful young girl riding these 2 dragon-colt horses. The boy was handsome and clean, he looked heroic. The girl was wearing clothes whiter than snow and was extremely beautiful. She looked like a celestial being. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the imperial city from outside. Life was so fleeting. Time passed at the speed of light. Nobody could predict anything. Lin Feng could still remember the year before when he and his father were expelled from the Lin clan. Back then, he had shown Yangzhou City how strong he was and returned to the Yunhai sect. But when he arrived at the Yunhai sect, it was destroyed and its members had been slaughtered. Lin Feng had then gone to the imperial city and had joined the Celestial Academy. Concerning the future, it was filled with uncertainties. A year had already passed and Lin Feng was just as determined and motivated as before. He was high-spirited and full of determination. That year hadn't been like the others. He had gotten familiar with this new world and gained his own power. For someone who had come from another world, he had quickly become accustomed to the world of cultivation. He had broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer and had learned how to penetrate into a special cultivation dimension, the Earth Fusion dimension. Everybody found his talent amazing. Lin Feng was looking at Meng Qing, who was riding next to him. He had a soft and tender smile on his face. It had only been a short time since he had met the young girl, but she was following him everywhere. Without complaining, she just silently and secretly followed him everywhere. Everything she did was for Lin Feng, as if that girl had been sent from heaven to watch over him. Meng Qing noticed that Lin Feng was staring at her. She had a strange facial expression for a second, and then looked at the vast and boundless road before them. She was calm, serene, yet as cold as ice, like an ice goddess. Meng Qing, do you remember the first time we rode a horse? Said Lin Feng while smiling. Meng Qing slightly nodded. Of course she knew. Well, then we should ride one horse like we did back then, said Lin Feng with a sly smile. He then jumped up in the air and immediately landed behind Meng Qing. The dragon colt horse neighed and galloped even faster, which made Meng Qing's body lean backwards against Lin Feng's chest. He took advantage of the situation and took Meng Qing into his arms. Both of them were extremely close to each other, as if they were in an embrace. That move made Meng Qing shiver from head to toe. This guy. I will lead the horse, said Lin Feng while smiling wholeheartedly. He then grabbed Meng Qing's hands, which were holding the reins, and the horse galloped even faster. When Meng Qing sensed Lin Feng's hands holding hers, she felt an electric shock run through her body. She could feel Lin Feng's chest pressed against her body. She had a strange sensation in her heart, as if she was floating on clouds. She didn't push him back. She just calmly sat on the horse, leaning against Lin Feng's chest. It was very calm, peaceful, and warm. In a distant place quite far from Yangzhou City, there was a chain of mountains. Surprisingly, there were many people on one of the mountains, and they were very agitated. These people all released a strong qi. Some of them were fighting, some others were practicing cultivation to the side. On the mountain, there were also many horses, qixia armored horses. In the mountains, above a precipice, was a single silhouette. That man was closing their eyes and could feel the wind against his body. He had the impression of being absent from the material world. That person stayed like that for a while and then abruptly opened his eyes. The dazzling light of a blade flashed through his eyes. On that person's face a huge word was carved, Dao. That person looked extremely brutal and aggressive. Blade of the wind, said that person in a low voice. A long blade cut through the air like it was a blade made from wind. It was almost invisible and inaudible, except for a magnificent and resplendent silver light which was diffused. Kacha! A small sound emerged, and in the distance, a huge rock was cut into pieces. Ba Dao seemed satisfied of himself. He put his blade back in his back and gazed into the distance. Immediately after, in the distance, he saw two silhouettes riding one horse coming towards the mountain where there were many people. He finally arrived. When Ba Dao saw the two people approaching, he seemed really happy and smiled. The Qixia troops had been waiting there in the mountains for them. They were waiting to go to Yangzhou City. The end of the year in Yangzhou City was a happy event. The juniors who were practicing outside of their hometown usually came back to see their families. At that moment, Yangzhou City was lively. The end of the year in Yangzhou City was a happy event. The juniors who were practicing outside of their hometown usually came back to see their families. At that moment, Yangzhou City was lively. The guards raised their heads on the top on the gate. They looked domineering and majestic. There was a continuous flow of pedestrians whispering things in the city. Have you heard that the prodigy of the Lin clan Lin Qian came back to Yangzhou City? Now Lin Qian is terrific. She is a student of the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu and has a high social status. She is even stronger than some elders of her clan. Besides, some students of the Holy Courtyard followed her. That's really amazing, said some to one of the crowd in a low voice. They looked envious. Lin Qian was amazingly strong and was the pride of the Lin clan. Thanks to her, the rise of the Lin clan was destined. So what? Don't you know that when Nalan Feng came back, Nalan Xiong organized a grand banquet and many noble people attended? Besides, the Lin clan wasn't invited. Nalan Xiong did it on purpose because his daughter Nalan Feng has brought back a young man with her. His name is Du Gushao. He is related to some of the imperial ministers, one person who controls several thousands upon thousands. I don't dare think about such people, said the person next to them. They were surprised. Everywhere in Shuiyu, an imperial minister was an extremely high status. They were extraordinary people. Nalan Feng had the good fortune to get acquainted with someone whose relatives were imperial ministers. It would enable the Nalan clan to rise splendidly. How terrific! The Nalan clan and the Lin clan both want to rise. The two other clans cannot rival them any longer. All they can do is side with those in power. Absolutely. Last year, during the annual competition of Yangzhou City, Na Lanfeng and Lin Qian were both extremely strong, but after that, Bai Yuan Hao had appeared, he was even stronger than them. Oh, I just remembered, there was Lin Feng as well, the one who was expelled from the Lin clan. I don't know what he's been doing recently. Lin Feng? What could he do? He doesn't have an influential background. He must be leading a vagrant life and roaming the streets. Maybe Lin Qian and Na Lanfeng have already gotten rid of him. And even if they haven't, Lin Qian and Na Lanfeng have become so strong that Lin Feng could never catch up with them, said someone while sighing and shaking their head. At the annual competition of Yangzhou City, neither Lin Qian nor Na Lanfeng had been the most brilliant young talent. Instead, it had been an extremely frivolous young man, Lin Feng. These days, they hadn't received any news. Maybe he had died somewhere outside. Of course, nobody was really sure. Everyone was talking about Lin Qian and Na Lanfeng, the two prodigies of Yangzhou City. Every year at the end of the year, people used to gossip about the strong cultivators each year. But that year was particularly exciting. There were these two extremely strong and powerful female cultivators, and they were coming back stronger than ever. Occasionally on the road, Lin Feng's name could be heard as well. People were usually just mentioning his name without being too interested. Boom! Boom! Noises were emerging from the distance and spread through the atmosphere. It sounded like galloping horses, but it didn't seem plausible. How could horses emit such a concentrated and synchronized sound while galloping? Only a magnificent army with veterans could emit such sounds. The crowd in Yangzhou City was, however, still walking around in the city, leisurely and carefree. They didn't notice anything strange. Boom, 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 boom. The sound was getting louder and louder. Many people were a bit surprised, trying to concentrate and listen to see if there was anything strange. Besides, the sound was getting more and more intense. The ground was even starting to shake. The crowd was stupefied. They looked in the direction of the Yangzhou City gate. In the distance, it seemed like there was a cloud of dust rising into the sky. What's going on? All the people were gradually noticing it. There was a massive cloud of dust. Besides, that sound was really the sound of galloping horses. How loud it made their hearts tremble. Some red silhouettes gradually appeared in their field of vision. They were all wearing red armor. The horses were red as well. They all emitted a strong qi as they rushed through the air. They were galloping towards Yangzhou City at full speed, and a cloud of dust was rising around them, looking like a hurricane. Boom, boom, boom. Even though the guards at the top of the city gate had a position which enabled them to see into the distance, what was moving towards them seemed like a boundless dust cloud. Their hearts were pounding like crazy. An army. Surprisingly, it was an army. That was a terrifying and well-trained army of veterans. It was the first time that the city guard saw such a strong qi. Such a huge army in a perfect formation was also something breathtaking. They had the impression that their hearts were beating in their throats. The guards weren't the only ones. The population was also panicking while the army was moving nearer and nearer. Surprisingly, they were armored horses. It was a huge army of armored horses. Most people had never seen such a huge army of armored horses. It seemed like the ground would cave in under their hoofs. The ground was violently shaking. Everybody was absolutely dumbstruck. Why would such an army come to Yangzhou City? Quickly, quickly, close the gate, shouted some guards on top of the gate in panic. Shut the hell up, we have to keep it open. If somebody closes the gate, I'll kill him, shouted the leader of the guards. He was furious at those bastards who wanted to die. With such an army of armored horses, if the gate was closed, a single attack would be enough to destroy it. Besides, if they made the army angry, such an army could massacre the entire city. Amongst the guards on the city gate, none of them had the courage to fight. They were scared to death and their faces deathly pale. None of them had ever seen such a huge army in perfect formation. That sort of army was only seen on a battlefield, but not in a small town like Yangzhou City. Quickly, go and tell the head of the city, hurry up, shouted one of the guards. Obviously, they didn't know what to do. All they could think about was telling Na Lanxiong. Roger, said a few guards when they heard the order, and then immediately left. After all, who wanted to stay there? If the army attacked, they would all die. After that, when the vast army arrived near the Yangzhou City gate, they slowed down. They stopped before the gate of the city and didn't enter it. Even though the army was just calmly waiting there, they were still releasing extremely strong qi. It enveloped the gate of Yangzhou City as well as the crowd on and around it. Everyone within the city felt like they were being suffocated by the intense qi. How monstrous! The red armor, red horses, the image was shocking, almost like a psychological attack. It was too much for the crowd. They had never thought that someday, such an army would appear in Yangzhou City. At that moment, amongst the army, a silhouette emerged and raised their head, looked at the people on top of the gate and said, "Listen, from now on Yangzhou City is the fief of the Qixia Marquis. Everything in Yangzhou City now belongs to the officer of the Qixia army. Now, bring the head of the city to come and greet him." The Qixia Marquis, the Qixia officer, how powerful and majestic. Besides, he was making the head of the city come to greet them. They definitely had an extremely high social status. So that's how it was. The Qixia Marquis was the owner of Yangzhou City, but nobody knew who this person was. The crowd felt a bit relieved. Since the fief of Yangzhou City belonged to the Qixia Marquis, the army wasn't going to attack the city. That huge army hadn't come with malicious intent. "Go. Quickly bring the head of the city here," shouted the leader of the guards on the top of the gate, to one guard who wasn't moving. That person nodded and abruptly left in the direction of the government. He hadn't clearly heard the words of the Qixia soldiers though. He had only heard when he was told to bring the head of the city to greet them. The government was a huge and vast place. There were tables everywhere. The head of the city, Na Lanxiong, had organized an annual banquet to which many wealthy and noble cultivators were participating. He hadn't invited the Lin clan, but the atmosphere was pleasant and lively at that moment. Many people were proposing toasts. It seemed that Na Lanxiong was extremely proud because of his new son-in-law, and he was so excited that he was unceasingly drinking. "Master, master." At that moment, a worried voice spread in the air, interrupting the crowd. Na Lanxiong frowned and looked at the distance, seeing a guard worriedly and hastily rushing over to him. "A huge army is outside the city and we don't know who they are and what they are doing here," said the guard, who was uninterruptedly sweating. The crowd was stupefied. An army had come to the city? At that moment, another silhouette appeared and was running in their direction. "Stop," said Na Lanxiong. "Are you here because of the army too? What is that army doing right now?" "They want you to go and greet them," said the second guard who had arrived. Na Lanxiong frowned and looked pensive. "Tell their leader to come here, pay his respects and apologize for his offense." At that moment, a cold and detached voice came from the host seat. It was Du Guxiao. He was furious and half-drunk already. Surprisingly, there were people who dared disturb him during the banquet, and besides that, they also wanted Na Lanxiong to come and greet them. Since Du Guxiao was there, they had to give him face. He was there, so no matter who it was, they had to come pay respects and respectfully apologize for offending him. Many people sighed. He was really worthy of his social status. He was extremely strong. They were all panicking, and he, instead, ordered the troublemakers to come and apologize for their offense. Du Guxiao was wildly arrogant and presumptuous. The guards looked petrified and nervous. "But, there is no but. Tell him to get over here and apologize for his offense. Say that Du Guxiao gave the order, otherwise they will regret the consequences." Du Guxiao stood up and released some cold qi. His voice was ice-cold as well. The guard was surprised and blankly staring at Du Guxiao. When he saw the coldness in his eyes, he immediately nodded and said, "Roger." When they finished talking, the two guards abruptly left. "All right, everybody can continue. Let's not let such events ruin our banquet," said Na Lanxiong while raising his glass and smiling. Everybody raised their glass and laughed heartily. Concerning Du Guxiao, he went back to his seat and looked calm. In such a small city, no matter how strong the person was, they had to obey him and apologize for their offense. The Qixia troops were calmly waiting outside of the city. The Qixia troops were calmly waiting outside of the city. At that moment, one guard came back from the government building. He climbed to the top of the gate and looked at the vast and boundless army. He couldn't help but shake from head to toe. "Tell him to get over here and apologize for his offense." The guard was thinking about these words, and they did not sit well in his chest. If he said these words out loud, wouldn't they just kill him? "Open your mouth," said an aggressive voice, piercing the guard's ears. The guard was shaking. Immediately after, he closed his eyes and said, "The head of the city said that you should go and apologize for your offense." When he finished talking, The guard felt as if he had been relieved from a huge burden. But when the other guards heard what he said, they were astonished. They were all shaking from head to toe while thinking about the reaction of the army. How did that arrogant bastard dare to tell the Wuxia troops such an audacious thing? When the Wuxia troops heard the words, they started to release an incredible amount of qi which created a hurricane which rushed towards the city gate. The entire crowd suddenly felt extremely cold. How cold? That qi was piercingly cold, to the extent that it made everyone feel a shiver run down their spines. Lin Feng on his dragon colt horse moved forwards. Nalan Xiong, was he really this brave? He was wearing a mask, but under his mask he had an incredibly evil grin. Lin Feng said in a cold tone, "We have been invited to go to the government building to apologize." "Roger," shouted the troops in unison, which caused panic within the crowd. They brandished their spears and headed towards Yangzhou City. Lin Feng's voice wasn't loud, but when the guards in the crowd heard that the troops were going to the government for an apology, they felt that this was not a good thing for the Nalan clan. The young man riding the dragon colt horse was probably their officer. How majestic! He could say a few words and the entire army obeyed him. Boom! Boom! The ground started shaking once again. The Wuxia troops were galloping in perfect harmony, which sent terrifying booms through the atmosphere, sounding like thunder. The hearts of the people in the crowd were pounding. The Wuxia army transformed into a huge red dragon as it entered Yangzhou City. That huge red dragon seemed like it was flying through the city. At that moment the people were panicking. None of them dared to block the way of the Wuxia troops. Everybody was moving aside. What a strong and powerful army! Where are they from? Why have they come to Yangzhou City? The people of Yangzhou City were asking themselves many questions. When they saw that huge army with their own eyes, they had the feeling that their heart would explode in their chest. They were way too majestic. The qi they were releasing was so strong that the people in the crowd had the feeling that their legs lost all power. Some of them were completely frozen, not daring to move. In the government building, the atmosphere was still lively and joyful. People were still merry and drinking. At that moment, the ground started shaking as if there was an earthquake. The people present at the banquet were suddenly stupefied and frowned. Immediately after, the noise of the Wuxia horses galloping became louder and was unceasingly spreading through the atmosphere. What's going on? What the hell is this? Each and every single person who was present at the banquet stood up, their facial expressions growing rigid. That noise was frightening. What was happening outside? Nalan Xiong frowned and gazed into the distance outside the building. He looked lost in thought and seemed to be contemplating the size of the army. "Father, do not worry. Du Guxiao is here. The only reason why such a large army is coming here is because they want to apologize for their mistakes," said Nalan Feng while slightly smiling. Du Guxiao, with his social status, was not scared of any army. "All right." Nalan Xiong slightly nodded and said, "All right everyone, let's drink more. They are coming here to apologize." The guests listened to him, but they couldn't ease the fear in their hearts. Were these people really coming to apologize? Why did the guests have the feeling that cold killing intent could be felt from the direction of the army? It seemed like it was coming from the Wuxia army. The rumbling sounds were getting louder and louder. When the guard in front of the building saw the army galloping towards him in the distance, he was astonished. Red armor, red horses. They looked majestic and cruel. His heart started pounding in his chest. Only a short moment later, an incredibly vast and boundless army arrived in front of the government building. Boom! The sound of destruction spread through the atmosphere. A hurricane emerged and crushed the gate in front of the building. Boom! Sounds of things being destroyed filled the atmosphere. Everything in front of the government building had been destroyed. The Wuxia troops annihilated everything in their path and left no obstacle standing. After having cleared the path to the entrance of the building, the troops entered the government building. Even though their army was incredibly large, they were still in perfect formation. There wasn't the least bit of chaos in their formation. Concerning the guards, they were stunned by the sight of the sea of cavalry. They were standing motionless and let the cavalry pass by. They had the impression that the horses could crush them under their hoofs at any moment, but the army was in perfect formation and simply moved around the guards. Not even a hair was touched. They were perfectly accurate with each of their movements. The guards were terrified to be standing in the path of the horses. People in the government building were panicking and running around like headless chickens. They were scared silly. The happy laughter and cheerful voices of the banquet had stopped, not because it was covered by the noise from the army, but because nobody felt like laughing anymore. Everybody was standing up and looking at that vast and majestic sea of Wuxia horses. They had never been this scared before. Their hearts were violently pounding. A gigantic and powerful Wuxia army like that could easily annihilate the city. Only a glance at these troops on their Wuxia horses was enough to scare even a hardened soldier. That army was composed of the most elite troops. Every single soldier was a talented and disciplined cultivator, and there was an army of these powerful cultivators heading in their direction. The troops suddenly adopted a spiral formation, encircling everybody who was present at the banquet. Not even a single drop of water could trickle through, making everybody unable to escape, even if they grew wings and attempted to fly out. At that moment there wasn't a single person who could escape. This incredible army of elite troops could destroy anyone's courage. Nala Xiong's heart was pounding. Such a huge and powerful army had come to apologize. Du Guxiao was frowning. He put down his glass and slowly walked towards the person who was the closest to him. He looked at the person in front of him. The person was wearing a red armor and a majestic helm. That person's facial expression was ice cold. He then said, "What guts? You are the Wuxia army. Why have you come to Yangzhou City?" The Wuxia troops were elite troops in Shuiyu. The guests were stupefied. This army was the elite Wuxia army? That's why they were wearing red armor and had Wuxia armored horses. Nobody paid attention to him. They looked at Du Guxiao's performance as if he was a fool. Du Guxiao was furious. Mere soldiers dared to make him lose face. Especially now that he had bragged about how respected and influential he was. "Who's your officer? Show yourself and apologize." Du Guxiao shouted. Even though he felt scared standing before such a powerful army, he belonged to the Dugu clan. He had the right to be arrogant. His family was incredibly powerful and it was hard to scare him when he had such a high status. Everybody in the Nalong clan treated him like a deity. He was drunk and started to believe that he actually was a deity when inside such a small city. He was extremely arrogant. Besides, he was the one who dared to force the army here. How could he flinch at this moment? Nalan Feng stood next to Du Guxiao. She was looking coldly at the army. She felt proud of the man she loved. Nobody dared offend the members of the Dugu clan. Even the Wuxia officers wouldn't dare. After all, she didn't just pick anyone to be with her. "You are all extremely audacious. How dare you storm into the government like this?" Nalan Feng said. She had the impression that her boyfriend was a mighty hero. She wasn't scared at all because a member of the Dugu clan was beside her. "Show myself? Apologize? Audacious?" Lin Feng mockingly said. He made his horse slowly trot to the front of the army. He was wearing a bronze mask. His expression was ice cold and evil. He didn't look at Du Guxiao and Nalan Feng. He was looking directly at Nalan Xiong. "Nalan Xiong, head of Yangzhou City, you wanted me to come here and apologize?" Nalan Xiong was astonished. How did Lin Feng know who he was within the crowd? Lin Feng frowned when he heard Du Guxiao interrupt with a shout. "I'm talking to you, didn't you hear me?" Lin Feng looked at Du Guxiao, another arrogant cultivator acting foolishly. "What do you want?" said Lin Feng in a cold tone. The crowd was shocked. Du Guxiao was astonished. His face lost all color. The expression in his eyes turned ice cold. "My family name is Du Gu," said Du Guxiao in an arrogant tone. Lin Feng was surprised. Du Gu? That name sounded familiar. He had indeed met Du Guxiang. Lin Feng looked at Du Guxiao again and a smile appeared under his bronze mask. "So what? The Dugu clan of the imperial city," said Du Guxiao aggressively. "His relatives are part of the imperial ministers," said Nalan Feng arrogantly. "Now get down off your horse and apologize. Then I will pretend that this never happened." Du Guxiao said when he heard Nalan Feng say the word, imperial ministers. His facial expression also revealing a proud expression. "Imperial ministers?" whispered Lin Feng while lowering his head and looking at Du Guxiao with a cold stare. He only noticed that every second Du Guxiao was growing even more arrogant. Indeed, Du Guxiang and him were both cut from the same cloth. Cut one of his arms off, Lin Feng said in a cold tone while waving his hand. Everybody was dumbstruck. Cut one of his arms off. Cut one of his arms off. Lin Feng's voice was calm. Everybody was absolutely petrified. Lin Feng wanted to cut one of Du Guzhao's arms off? Du Guzhao was related to an imperial minister and he would dare to cut his arm off? Du Guzhao's arrogant expression vanished. His heart was pounding. What did he just hear? After having declared his social status and demanding for Lin Feng to apologize, Lin Feng hadn't even paid attention to him and calmly ordered his soldiers to cut one of his arms off? People in the crowd felt like their hearts skipped a beat. What did you just say? Asked Na Lanfeng, whose heart was pounding. Immediately after, she looked at Lin Feng with an ice-cold glare. Du Guzhao was her boyfriend and she was extremely happy to be with him. When the people of the banquet had learnt that a huge army had come to Yangzhou City, they had all panicked. Only Na Lanfeng and Du Guzhao had remained calm and were extremely arrogant. They were the ones who demanded the army come to apologize. Listen to me, you want to cut one of my arms off? Said Du Guzhao in an ice-cold tone, while releasing some cold qi. At the same time, a soldier wearing a bronze mask rushed out from the army while releasing some extremely thick and brutal qi. Slash. Lin Feng didn't feel like hearing any more words. Ba Dao jumped through the air. A magnificent and bright light filled the atmosphere. In the blink of an eye it disappeared. The only thing left in the atmosphere was gushing blood. The entire atmosphere turned completely silent. Everybody was staring at the blood. Their hearts were shaken. They had really cut off his arm. That soldier didn't hesitate at all. The Qixia officer gave an order and his arm had immediately been completely cut off. Besides, that bright and dazzling light which flashed through the air remained in their minds. They couldn't think about anything else. The entire atmosphere was invaded by a heavy silence. Du Guzhao broke that silence when he uttered a long cry of agony. He was covering his bleeding stump with his other hand. His face was deathly pale. There wasn't the slightest trace of color in his face. Besides, on his side, Na Lanfeng was blankly staring at the scene. Her beautiful cheeks turned white. Had Du Guzhao really lost his arm? It's over. Na Lanxiong's heart was violently pounding. The Dugu clan would never accept the fact that Du Guzhao's arm had been cut off, and they would hold the Na Lan clan responsible. How could this happen? Thought Na Lanxiong while feeling enraged. He raised his head and looked at Lin Feng, the officer of the Qixia troops, who was wearing a bronze mask. At that moment Lin Feng looked at him as well. Behind his mask, his face was as calm and serene as before. He did not care about the events that had just transpired. You wanted me to come and apologize? Said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. Na Lanxiong's facial expression became rigid. He was realizing that Lin Feng might also cut off his arms. This officer was insane. Would it be that simple though? But at that moment, Na Lanxiong was surrounded by an army and couldn't escape at all. Lin Feng just had to give the order, and the Na Lan clan would be annihilated. Na Lanxiong had listened to Du Guzhao and told them to come apologize. He had asked the officer of the Qixia army to come and apologize? Of course, all of this was happening because Na Lanxiong had trusted Du Guzhao too much. After all, his family was tied to imperial ministers. However, he wouldn't have thought that an officer would actually dare to cut off one of Du Guzhao's arms, especially when considering his social background. Who are you? Said Du Guzhao, sounding evil while staring at Lin Feng. He wanted to slaughter Lin Feng. I am Du Guzhao of the Dugu clan. Our clan has imperial ministers? And you dared to cut off my arm? You are dead, shouted Na Lanfeng while staring at Lin Feng. Her facial expression was hideous. Dugu clan imperial ministers, I know all of that, said Lin Feng indifferently. He then looked at Du Guzhao and said, What is your relation to Du Guzhang? Huh. Du Guzhao was surprised. He was staring at Lin Feng. My older brother. Since you know, how dare you cut off my arm? At that moment his wound was extremely painful. Your older brother? You are all the same. You whole clan must be incredibly stupid, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. He then added, Could it be that your brother hasn't told you? A few days ago at the Celestial Academy, I slapped him into a stupor and then made him kneel down and kowtow to me. Du Guxiao was violently shaking and staring at Lin Feng. He was dumbstruck. Surprisingly, it was him. He should have thought about this earlier. Wuxia officer, Yangzhou City must be his fief. Why didn't he think about it sooner? That was because in his head, the Wuxia army should belong to Duanren City, but surprisingly they had come to Yangzhou City. He was now realizing that the Wuxia army hadn't gone back to Duanren City. Instead, they had come to the new fief of their officer, a small city that was not worth mentioning. Lin Feng had set a whole city on fire, had crossed a huge distance to save the princess. He rushed over to the imperial city to save Lu Conglan from being executed. Then he killed Duan Tianlang's son in front of him. He was the Marquis of Yangzhou City. Lin Feng had become a legend in the imperial city. Lin Feng was absolutely fearless. He didn't even fear Duan Tianlang and killed his son in front of him. Was there anything that Lin Feng didn't dare to do? Du Guxiao's face was deathly pale. Why did this happen to him? There were imperial ministers in his family. The crowd also noticed that Lin Feng was silent. They were stupefied. He had slapped Du Guxiao's brother? He even made him kowtow. Who was this person? He was truly insane. He wasn't even scared of facing the Du Gu clan? Na Lanfeng and Na Lanxiong saw that Du Guxiao had also become silent. They were shaking in fear. Du Guxiao, surprisingly, was keeping his mouth closed from fear. If he remained silent, it meant that Lin Feng was speaking the truth. His brother had really been slapped by Lin Feng and had kowtowed as an apology. Who is he? Whispered Na Lanfeng, but Du Guxiao ignored her. He had a strange smile on his face. Good. Du Guxiao was almost driven insane. He couldn't do anything against Lin Feng. He wasn't strong enough to rival him, and his clan would not risk getting involved. His brother had even been humiliated by him. All he could do was remain silent. His brother had been humiliated. He himself had just lost an arm. How could he not be driven into madness? That Wuxia officer was really a terrifying existence. Du Guxiao demanded the army come and apologize. It seems like he knows the officer but can't afford to offend him, thought the people in the crowd. The Nalong clan was in trouble. A moment before, Du Guxiao was insufferably arrogant and aggressive, but then his arm was cut off. He didn't even dare to make another sound. The Nalong clan had no escape. Apologize? Lin Feng was standing before them. Who could stop him? Everybody wanted to say that it had nothing to do with the Nalong clan so that they would be able to avoid a catastrophe. Nalan Xiong, I am the Wuxia Marquis in Yangzhou City is my fief. I arrived in Yangzhou City and instead of a greeting, you demand an apology. How audacious, said Lin Feng in an extremely cold tone, making everybody shiver. What should be your punishment? Said Lin Feng. Nalan Xiong's heart was beating extremely violently. He was the Marquis of Yangzhou City. He had surprisingly come to receive his fief, and Nalan Xiong refused to greet him and demanded an apology. That was an offense. Nalan Xiong remained silent. He only saw Lin Feng turn to the other members of his clan. What do you think? How should he be punished? The crowd was shaking. Lin Feng was terrifying. The last person to speak will die, said Lin Feng. Then suddenly everyone burst into uproar. Nalan Xiong is a criminal. He should die. When Nalan Xiong heard that, he evilly stared at the person. The person was flattering him a short moment before, and at that moment he was saying that he should die. What a venomous snake. Indeed, Nalan Xiong should die. He definitely has to die. Yes, you're right, kill him. Everybody who was present was replying as quickly as possible, scared to be the last person. Lin Feng was smiling under his mask. Finally, he looked at Nalan Xiong and said, Did you hear that? Everybody is saying that you should die. When Nalan Xiong saw that Lin Feng might kill him, and when he saw Lin Feng's calm eyes, he had the feeling that he knew him from somewhere. I know you. Who are you? Said Nalan Xiong to Lin Feng. He realized that Lin Feng may have come specifically for him. Do you want to know who I am? Said Lin Feng calmly. I do, said Nalan Xiong while nodding. He of course wanted to know. All right, I see. Lin Feng smiled. He put his hands on his bronze mask and slowly took it off. His face appeared. Everybody, including Nalan Xiong, could see him. At that moment, the atmosphere became entirely silent. Commit suicide. Lin Feng. It's Lin Feng, I can't believe it. Their hearts were racing. The officer of the Qixia army was surprisingly Lin Feng. Back in the past, Lin Feng had begun to show his brilliant talent, but then the Lin clan and the Nalan clan made him their enemy and forced him to leave. The previous year, during the annual competition, many of the prestigious figures of Yangzhou City had personally seen Lin Feng. All the people present at Nalan Xiong's banquet were rich, noble and prestigious figures. Therefore they could all recognize Lin Feng, that talented young man. The young man, who was now the officer of a powerful army which made the entire city vibrate, surprisingly was the same delicate and handsome young man they saw during the previous competition. Nobody would have ever thought of such a thing even in their dreams. Besides, how old was Lin Feng? He was not even 18 years old, and he was already the officer of the Qixia army, the Qixia Marquis. He already had an army of tens of thousands under his control. That was amazing. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng and wanted to speak, but they all knew to remain silent. Nalan Xiong was also shaking. Lin Feng was surprisingly the officer of the Qixia army. Incredibly, it was the same Lin Feng. His heart was pounding. Back in the past, Lin Feng was considered trash and had been expelled from the Lin clan. Now he had become a marquis? Nalan Xiong had the impression that the situation was contradictory with everything that he knew about Lin Feng. Of course, the person who was most surprised was Nalan Feng. When she saw Lin Feng take off his mask, she was dumbstruck. Her heart started pounding. Immediately after, she bit her lips and blankly stared at the frivolous and handsome young man. During the annual competition of the previous year, she had thought that she would be the best cultivator in the competition. She had thought that only Lin Qian would be her rival. However, nothing happened the way she had thought. Bai Yuanhou and Lin Feng appeared from nowhere. They had stolen her prestige. However, during the competition, she had thought that she was at the same cultivation layer as Lin Feng, and she would easily surpass him in the future. However, Lin Feng was appearing in front of her again. He had an incredible social status. He had an army of Qixia cavalry and owned the entire Yangzhou city. He had cut off the arm of her influential and arrogant boyfriend. Lin Feng was not even agitated. Lin Feng had easily ordered for his arm to be cut off. Maybe this was very normal for him. Du Guzhao's social status was high. His relatives were imperial ministers. The fact that he had come with her had made Nalan Feng extremely proud. The entire city of Yangzhou respected and admired her because of her boyfriend's status. That was why they were unceasingly flattering her. Even her clan had organized the banquet and invited the richest and most noble people to greet him. Nalan Feng wasn't prepared for such a situation. She hadn't thought that a fight would break out at all. All of this was happening because of the Qixia army. Lin Feng had easily shattered her arrogance. Actually, he had crushed her entire reality and turned her world upside down. She was much weaker than Lin Feng. She could not even touch his shadow. Surprisingly, at that moment the calmest person of the group was the person who had just lost an arm, Du Guxiao. That was because Lin Feng had mentioned that he slapped Du Guxiang. At that moment, Du Guxiao understood what kind of person he was dealing with and the social status that Lin Feng had. He had never seen Lin Feng's face before. When looking at that young and handsome man, Du Guxiao wanted to rip him to shreds. Lin Feng had not only crushed his arrogance but he also cut off his arm. Besides, his natural talent was far beyond Du Guxiao. The crowd was astonished. When Lin Feng noticed the reactions, he was smiling coldly. Power was determined by strength and status. In the past, he was an unknown and quiet young man. Even though he had participated in the annual competition, his strength was still not enough. He also had no social status at all. He had been so talented that Nalan Xiong wasn't able to bear it, and forced the Gu clan and the One clan to get involved. Everybody had joined forces in an attempt to kill him. He had been reluctant to leave Yangzhou City, but now he was back. However, the new Lin Feng had become much stronger. He could control an entire army, therefore he could look down on everyone. He had the power of life and death. He used to be humiliated every single day that he spent living in Yangzhou City, but he still returned to the place he called home. "Do you understand things more clearly now?" said Lin Feng in a calm voice while looking at Nalan Xiong. That calm voice made everyone tremble. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng. They were all confused. They were unable to calm their racing hearts. Nobody would have thought that the young man, who was forced from Yangzhou City in humiliation, would come back and shock them all. Na Lanxiong was having trouble breathing as the shock had been too great. He didn't know what to say, but he knew, more than everyone else, what was going to happen. Lin Feng was as handsome, frivolous and determined as before. In the past, Lin Feng's strength wasn't enough to make a difference, but now he was able to control an entire army, and became the Marquis of Yangzhou City. Could Lin Feng still be the same weak young man? That was of course impossible. What do you want? Na Lanxiong was staring at Lin Feng. He felt extremely disheartened. Today was supposed to be a happy day, but because of Lin Feng, it had become a tragic event. What about you? Said Lin Feng while smiling coldly, and then continued. Last year you, Na Lanxiong, as the head of the Nalan clan, organized the annual competition. I had joined, but when I won, the Lin clan wanted my life. You, as the one organizing the event, didn't try to stop them at all. You gave your tacit agreement. You wanted me to die. I beat everybody, including your daughter. I even took her as a hostage, so of course you wanted to see me dead. The Yangzhou City competition was a joke? Lin Feng was speaking slowly. Besides, you organized everything to make your daughter seem stronger than she was. But now I am stronger than your daughter. Back then, your daughter sent people to kill me because I refused to give her my table. She thought that she could put herself high above me. I could have died at any point. Lin Feng's words were insufferably powerful and cold. Therefore, for everything that you made me suffer, I will return it back. I want you to take your own life. You must take your own life. Lin Feng's tone was calm and peaceful. The crowd was astonished and their hearts were pounding once again. Lin Feng was surprisingly asking Na Lanxiong, the head of Yangzhou City, to commit suicide. In the past, who would have thought that the delicate and handsome young man would, one day, look at Na Lanxiong and tell him to kill himself? In the past, Na Lanxiong was sitting at the top, and it was as if Lin Feng was an ant beneath his foot. If I decide against that, said Na Lanxiong while staring at Lin Feng aggressively, you can choose to refuse. I don't have much time to play with you, so I will give you 10 seconds to think it over. If you don't reply, I will take that as your refusal. The countdown starts now. He had 10 seconds to decide. How domineering, how powerful. 1, 2. Lin Feng didn't care about what other people thought. He was looking at Na Lanxiong and counting. Na Lanxiong's face turned deathly pale. He had never thought that suddenly, someone would tell him to end his own life. Besides, he also had the choice to refuse. The only problem was who would dare to refuse. 6, 7. Time passed. The 10 seconds had almost elapsed. Everybody was staring at Na Lanxiong. No, don't, said Na Lanfeng while looking at her father and shaking her head frenetically. She regretted everything at that moment. Everything that was happening was because of her. She had used her status to send people to kill him over nothing. If she hadn't acted that way in the past, maybe they wouldn't be in such a desperate situation at that moment. Her pride and arrogance had a price, and what a tragic one. 9. Ha 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 ha. At that moment a loud laugh spread through the atmosphere. Na Lanxiong was laughing as if he was carefree. This isn't. A sound echoed through the banquet hall along with the echoing laughter. Suddenly, blood started spilling from Na Lanxiong's mouth. Father. Na Lanfeng's face turned deathly pale. Her father had chosen to kill himself. He hadn't dared to gamble. Lin Feng was excessively cruel. Na Lanfeng felt hatred rise up from the bottom of her heart. Everybody was looking at Na Lanxiong. He had run himself through and pierced his vitals. Everybody was looking at Na Lanxiong. He had run himself through and pierced his vitals. Suicide. The head of Yangzhou City had, in front of Lin Feng, committed suicide as a punishment for his crime. A short time before, it was his future son-in-law who had made Lin Feng come to apologize. Father, shouted Na Lanfeng while looking at her father piercing his vital organs. A cracking sound spread in the air. Her face turned deathly pale. The expression her eyes revealed pure hopelessness. Lin Feng, I chose to obey you and commit suicide, but my family, including my daughter, are innocent. I hope that you can let them off, said Na Lanxiong, and then he injected qi into his vitals and there was a small explosion of all his organs. Immediately after, his face lost its color and he fell heavily onto the floor. One of the great figures of Yangzhou City had killed himself because of Lin Feng's words. His power and influence were incredible. Lin Feng wanted him to die, so he didn't dare to live. He was scared that Lin Feng would annihilate his entire bloodline. These days, the officer of the Qixia army seemed extremely cruel. His words were as sharp as a sword. Nobody could stop him, and if somebody tried to block him, he would kill them. Na Lanxiong had had only one choice, to die. If he didn't agree, he would die. If he refused, he would die. Therefore, he had decided to accept. He had to kill himself in order to protect his clan. I have nothing against your family, except for Na Lanfeng. How could I have mercy on her? Said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached, while looking at Na Lanxiong's corpse. It wasn't only because Na Lanfeng had sent people to kill him and he almost died from that encounter. Even though he had taken her as a hostage, that wasn't enough. Lin Feng hadn't forgiven her. Besides, she wasn't showing any signs that she regretted what she had done. She was still insufferably arrogant and thought that, by relying on Du Guzhao's social status, she could act as she wished. Lin Feng couldn't tolerate her continuously looking down on people. Lin Feng had been in that world for over a year. He had changed and was no longer weak and indecisive. These days, if he had a feeling in his heart, he'd trust it, even if it meant killing people without mercy. The most important thing was to stick to one's convictions. The crowd was stupefied. Lin Feng surprisingly wasn't going to let Na Lanfeng off. Na Lanfeng was hugging her father's dead body. Her face looked lifeless and she was still staring at Lin Feng because Lin Feng had cut off one of Du Guzhao's arms and had forced her father to kill himself. What did he intend to do with her? No need to look at me like that. Back in the past, it was just the beginning. When you tried to kill me, I would have never thought that I would have the opportunity to get my revenge so soon. You can cripple your own cultivation. I will not kill you. Lin Feng still looked expressionless. Na Lanfeng's eyes were filled with hatred. Lin Feng had a clear conscience when it came to what he was doing because he knew that Na Lanxiong and Na Lanfeng would have done even worse things to him. Since that girl was so arrogant and presumptuous, Lin Feng thought that it would be good to make her cripple her own cultivation so that she would be forced to live like the ordinary people she disdained. Hurry up, I don't want to have to see your face any longer than required, said Lin Feng coldly while staring at Na Lanfeng. In the past, when she tried to kill Lin Feng, she would have never thought that such a day would come. Mountains can be reduced to rubble over time, if there is a man with enough conviction to do so. All right, said Na Lanfeng, whose face was deathly pale. She suddenly released qi and attacked herself. Immediately after, she groaned. All of her accumulated qi filled the air. Na Lanfeng's face became even paler. She was extremely weak. The incredibly arrogant girl of Yangzhou City had become a piece of trash. The only reason was because she hated Lin Feng in the past and tried to kill him. When Lin Feng saw that Na Lanfeng was done with crippling her own cultivation, he put his mask back on and made his dragon colt horse slowly turn around. He then started speaking in a calm and peaceful voice. Pajun, you will stay here and reorganize everything in the government building. Then we will use this place to station the troops. Everybody else follow me. When Lin Feng finished talking, he left on his horse, looking natural and unrestrained. Rumbling filled the area again as the army started to leave the area. The Qixia troops were also moving towards the exit. A short time after, they had all disappeared from the field of vision of the crowd. But the crowd was still staring at the empty space in front of them. The images of the army were still engraved into their minds. Lin Feng had left. Where had he gone? Lin clan, it has to be the Lin clan. Many people had the same thought at the same time. In the past, Lin Feng belonged to the Lin clan. Lin Feng had been expelled and disgraced, but now he had become extremely powerful. He had become of the officer of the Qixia and even owned Yangzhou City. He had cut off one of Du Guzhao's arms, had killed the head of the city and made Na Lanfeng cripple her own cultivation. Even though he hadn't moved a single finger to do all this, everything was under his control. These days, Lin Feng could deeply affect Yangzhou City. He held the power of life and death. How could he not go to the Lin clan, who had expelled and disgraced both Lin Feng and Lin Hai? Lin Feng didn't know that the Na Lan clan was planning a festive occasion. He also didn't know that the Lin clan was extremely lively at this moment. At the end of the year, the Lin clan held an annual meeting and the competition between the juniors was still occurring. Around the fighting stage of the Lin clan were the older people of the Lin clan. They were looking at the juniors battling. They all had big smiles on their faces. The juniors of the Lin clan were good, and they all had relatively impressive talents. It seemed like this generation had some good qualities. It seemed like the clan would be able to rise in the future. Lin Ba Dao, Qian Qian is the strongest and most outstanding young cultivator we have. Not only does she have an ice and fire spirit, but she is also very young. Having broken through to the 4th Ling Qi layer, she will soon catch up with me. And at that point, she will even be stronger than me, even with all my years of experience. Congratulations. An elder of the clan was looking at the fighting stage and talking to Lin Ba Dao. The elder was flattering Lin Ba Dao, which made a huge smile appear on his face. Lin Ba Dao felt extremely proud when people flattered his daughter. He of course enjoyed it very much. He also felt flattered for raising such a genius. Indeed, nobody can rival with Lin Qian. She's a real genius. Lin Feng, that piece of trash, was a nobody. He was extreme weak. I don't even care if he's dead now. Many people were flattering Lin Qian and Lin Ba Dao, even if it meant they had to lie. Indeed, during the last annual meeting of the Lin clan, everybody had seen that Lin Feng was powerful. They all knew that Lin Qian couldn't rival with Lin Feng, which is why Lin Ba Dao and the respectable elder had to expel him. He was much more talented than Lin Qian. Nobody was trying to compare them though. Lin Qian had an ice and fire spirit, and she was a student of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. Lin Feng was far from being at her level. Even though he had won against her in the past, people still thought at the time he was lucky and he had probably died long ago. Lin Ba Dao's smile was huge and he said, "All our juniors are incredible and all practice cultivation very hard. They are all very good. That is how a good clan head should act." Lin Hai, in the past, just prevented the clan from progressing. Besides, his son was a disobedient brat who was not loyal to the clan. He left Lin Ba Dao. Lin Feng and Lin Hai could never rival Qian Qian and me. Exactly never, said the people immediately in reply. At that moment they didn't know it, but outside of the Lin clan, someone was standing at the entrance to the gate. He looked calm and serene. The Lin clan. Lin Feng raised his head and saw the sign at the top of the gate. Felt very familiar. Lin Feng's heart was beating a bit faster. It used to be his clan. Today is the annual meeting of the Lin clan, thought Lin Feng. He took a deep breath and immediately moved forwards. He hadn't seen the Lin clan for such a long time. Stop. The guards of the Lin clan blocked the way when they saw him. They coldly asked, "Who are you?" Lin Feng looked at these two guards, smiled indifferently and said, "My name is Lin Feng." Lin Feng, said the two guards a bit surprised. They had been serving the Lin clan for half a year, but they had never heard a member with that name before. Did the Lin clan have such a person? "I don't know him," said the guards while looking at each other. They were still blocking the way, not letting Lin Feng enter. "You will know me very soon," said Lin Feng while smiling. Immediately after, a strong wind blew past their bodies. Even though their eyes were wide open, they couldn't see Lin Feng's movements. He had disappeared in a flash. He had vanished before their eyes. He moved past the guards like the wind and headed into the Lin clan territory. The annual meeting of the Lin clan was happening like every year at the end of the year. At that moment, Lin Ba Dao's son, Lin Hong, was punching another junior of the Lin clan. His fist was surrounded by a powerful ice. Immediately after, the entire crowd heard a loud shout from Lin Hong's opponent. The annual meeting of the Lin clan was happening like every year at the end of the year. At that moment, Lin Ba Dao's son, Lin Hong, was punching another junior of the Lin clan. His fist was surrounded by a powerful ice. Immediately after, the entire crowd heard a loud shout from Lin Hong's opponent. "Wow, how strong! Like father, like son. Lin Hong is extremely powerful." Indeed, it has been a series of successes since Lin Hai and his piece of trash son left the clan. Nowadays, the head of our clan has 2 children and they are both geniuses. Lin Qian is famous for being a genius, but Lin Hong is also a talented genius. He is amazing. Except for Lin Qian, nobody else in the Lin clan can rival him. They are both almost as powerful as the elders of the clan. said an elder while smiling. His clear and loud voice spread through the entire arena. Everybody could hear him very clearly. Amongst those who heard him was Lin Feng, who was calmly walking through the Lin clan territory. Lin Feng hadn't thought that people would still be criticizing him, and his father to satisfy Lin Ba Dao. He couldn't help but smile. He raised his head, looked at the person in the distance and said in a mocking tone, "Oh, is that so?" His voice wasn't loud at all, but everybody heard him. People were stupefied. They turned around and immediately they saw a silhouette, a young man. He looked surprisingly familiar. That familiar person was called a piece of trash by everyone, but during the annual meeting of the previous year, he had displayed an incredible power. After that, he had also shown an amazing display at the competition of Yangzhou City. Everybody had seen how strong he was, but he had been expelled of the Lin clan. At the time, the clan had decided to choose Lin Qian instead of Lin Feng. Everybody thus thought that Lin Qian was much stronger than Lin Feng and had a better talent to develop in the future. They thought that the clan would be able to rise alongside her and someday she would become the clan head. It's him. It's Lin Feng. Lin Feng came back. He came back to the Lin clan. Many people were astonished when they saw Lin Feng. He looked different. He seemed more handsome and delicate. That handsome young man also looked more mature than before. He looked very calm, yet his facial expression was extremely sharp and cold. Lin Feng. Lin Ba Dao narrowed his eyes. That young man, whom he had expelled from the clan, surprisingly dared to return. A mocking smile appeared on Lin Ba Dao's face. Of all the places where he could go, he returned to the Lin clan. He was courting death. On the stage, Lin Qian wasn't reacting the same way as her father. She started shaking violently. It was Lin Feng. Unbelievable. She had asked herself if the young man, who was terrifying the people in the imperial city, was going to come back to the Lin clan. She was not feeling safe and had hoped he would not return. Lin Feng had come back, and it was possible that he had come back to reclaim his and his father's lost honor. "You dared to come back?" said the ninth elder when he saw Lin Feng. He had an ice-cold and evil smile on the corner of his mouth. He then said, "Lin Feng, your father rebelled against the respectable elder and killed members of the clan. He has committed many crimes. Besides, you are the same and don't respect the elders. You are arrogant and rude. You have also been expelled from the Lin clan. Besides, last year, you attempted to assassinate Na Lan Feng, but luckily she managed to escape alive. Today you dared to return to Yangzhou City and even come back to the Lin clan? Are you done talking crap?" said Lin Feng to the ninth elder. He found him to be ridiculous. He had come back and they were still creating more crimes to accuse him. He didn't feel like listening to them anymore. Talking crap? The ninth elder narrowed his eyes. He was staring at Lin Feng with an ice-cold glare. "You called me a piece of trash a moment ago. Today is the annual meeting of the Lin clan. Would you dare to let your son come here and fight me?" said Lin Feng. The ninth elder's son was about the same age as Lin Feng. When he heard Lin Feng, he remained silent. His eyes looked even colder. "How come you're no longer talking? Your son is a piece of trash and doesn't dare fight, right?" "He is even worse than a piece of trash," said Lin Feng mockingly. He then started walking slowly towards the fighting stage. After a short moment, he appeared in front of the entire crowd and slowly walked towards the fighting stage. Many juniors of the Lin clan, when they saw Lin Feng pass by, opened the way for him, letting him pass towards the fighting stage. After that, Lin Feng moved onto the fighting stage and looked around at the crowd surrounding the stage. "How come you aren't saying anything?" said Lin Feng to the ninth elder again. Lin Ba Dao smiled coldly and said, "Lin Feng, we had forgotten that you were also a junior of the Lin clan. Last time we didn't kill you, we let you off, and surprisingly, instead of being thankful for showing you mercy, you dared come back to the Lin clan." "Didn't kill me? Mercy?" Lin Feng was a bit surprised. When had Lin Ba Dao showed him this mercy? When had he let him off? "When I arrived, I heard people licking Lin Ba Dao's boots. He is really shameless. He even surrounds himself with the same type of shameless people." "How audacious!" shouted the ninth elder extremely loudly. He also released a cold chi. "Maybe I am audacious. A moment ago you were talking about how great and majestic Lin Qian and Lin Hong were. They are true geniuses, right? Of course, they are the geniuses of our clan. replied the ninth elder. Well, and me, I am a piece of trash, right? So you already know your place, said the ninth elder mockingly. Since that is clearly the case, I, the piece of trash, I am willing to exchange pointers with the geniuses of the Lin clan, Lin Hong, Lin Qian, and any others who wish to come onto the stage. If I lose, then kill me, said Lin Feng in a loud voice. If he lost, he would die. How arrogant, how presumptuous, how majestic. The people of the Lin clan remained silent. Apart from Lin Qian and Lin Hong, who would be willing to battle against Lin Feng? 1 year before, Lin Feng was already extremely powerful. How strong would he be after a year? How come nobody is speaking? I, Lin Feng, want to die, said Lin Feng while laughing and staring at the crowd. He wanted to die. How insane did that sound? Everybody was stupefied, but as before, nobody dared reply. All the juniors of the clan were astonished and they were all looking at Lin Qian and Lin Hong. Only they could win against Lin Feng. But they knew about Lin Feng's exploits in the imperial city. Fighting against Lin Feng would be courting death. I, Lin Feng, beg of you to come and kill me, but nobody is coming. What a load of crap. You all dare to speak such insane words and pretend that you are better than me. You talk about geniuses. I admire your shamelessness. I didn't know that your shamelessness had reached unfathomable heights. Lin Feng really was making fun of the Lin clan, and it was becoming more and more obvious. The people of the clan felt their cheeks burning. Lin Feng had been expelled from the clan, but at that moment, he was on the fighting stage of the Lin clan and asking people to go kill him, and surprisingly, nobody dared to fight against him, including the young genius who was the hope of the clan, Lin Qian. You impudent brat! Furiously shouted the ninth elder. He had just finished talking and Lin Feng was already shouting and mocking the ninth elder. Didn't you, a moment ago, say that I was a piece of trash and that they are geniuses, but now where are they? I am here and I want to die, but they don't dare to fight. If you are willing to, you can also come down. I really want to die. How insane! How shocking! Lin Feng was inviting the ninth elder to come onto the fighting stage to kill him as well. He really had a death wish. The ninth elder narrowed his eyes and looked at Lin Qian and Lin Hong. He then immediately smiled coldly and said, Lin Feng, Lin Qian and Lin Hong are geniuses of the Lin clan. It would be a humiliation for them to fight against you, but since you want to die, I should help you. When he finished talking, the ninth elder jumped onto the fighting stage, immediately landing in front of Lin Feng. What an impressive agility technique, how beautiful! Lin Feng surprisingly challenged the ninth elder to a battle. How insane, he really wants to die. The ninth elder has broken through to the 5th Ling Qi layer. He definitely deserves his reputation as a strong cultivator. He is extremely powerful. Lin Feng is already dead. The crowd had various thoughts about the ninth elder when they saw him jump onto the fighting stage. At the same time, an insane quantity of ice qi concentrated itself on his fist, and suddenly bombarded the atmosphere, moving straight towards Lin Feng. It seemed like Lin Feng was going to freeze on the spot. Lin Feng was calmly standing there, looking at the ninth elder, who had an evil smile on his face. Die! Shouted the ninth elder, but at that moment, Lin Feng waved his hand and cut the atmosphere. A bright and resplendent sword qi flashed in the air. Immediately after, the ninth elder didn't even have the time to give a horrible shriek before his blood filled the air. He just pitifully groaned and collapsed. His facial expression looked calm. His body was lifeless. The crowd was astonished and their hearts were violently pounding. They were shocked, dumbstruck. Had the ninth elder died? The ninth elder had been killed by Lin Feng with a single blow? The crowd was dumbstruck and terrified. They only saw Lin Feng look at the corpse on the ground and say with an indifferent tone, "A piece of trash." Lin Feng walked forwards again. He looked at the crowd with an insane smile on his face. I, Lin Feng, want to die. I, Lin Feng, want to die. I, Lin Feng, want to die. His furious shout was echoing throughout people's hearts like the waves of a tsunami. The words, "I want to die," were so arrogant. He had been expelled from the clan, and at this moment, he was looking down on everyone. The one everyone used to call a piece of trash was at this moment looking down on the clan and mocking them as if they meant nothing. I, Lin Feng, the piece of trash who was expelled from the clan. Lin Feng kept joking. In the past, during the competition of Yangzhou City, he had also said things that sounded insane at the time, but his power shocked everyone. Back then, he was already much stronger than Lin Qian. Lin Qian could not rival him. Besides, these days, even though Lin Qian had broken through to the 4th Ling Qi layer, Lin Feng had just killed the 9th elder, who was at the 5th Ling Qi layer with a single attack. How strong was he really? Could Lin Qian rival such a monster? Lin Feng was the most outstanding disciple of the Lin clan, but such a genius had been expelled. "Why is nobody speaking?" said Lin Feng. The crowd only stared at him. They all remained absolutely silent. Lin Feng couldn't help but keep mocking them. "Before I arrived, were you not all flattering Lin Qian and Lin Badao? Were you not all just criticizing my father and me to gain his good graces? Now I am standing before you, but each and every single person here has suddenly become deaf and mute. If I am a piece of trash, you are a bunch of shameless, low-life, worthless cultivators." Lin Feng's voice was piercing through the silent atmosphere. Everyone's faces were turning bright red. They were looking at Lin Feng with killing intent in their eyes. "Your father and you are the same traitors, who don't respect the elders of the clan. You are both filthy animals." At that moment, a furious voice interrupted. It came from Lin Feng's third uncle Lin Haoran. When he saw Lin Feng, he remembered his son, who had been crippled by Lin Feng, and became filled with jealousy. But this jealousy quickly turned into hatred. Lin Feng was stupefied. A sharp expression filled his eyes and he glared at Lin Haoran. A traitor, his father and he were animals? "Incredibly, it is possible to reach such a high level of shamelessness," said Lin Feng coldly, and then added, "Back in the past, my father and I never offended you, but because you wanted his position as head of the clan, you humiliated me and threatened my father. You wanted to replace him as the clan head using despicable methods. Have you ever thought about the fact that he was your brother? After that, because you created an opportunity to reach your goal, the respectable elder attacked and injured my father. Then you expelled us from the Lin clan. You are really shameless. Besides, during the annual competition of Yangzhou City, I started to reveal outstanding talent, but you were afraid of my talent, which is why you tried to kill me. Did you think about our blood relations at that time? Now you are calling me a traitor? Why is that? You attack your own brother, the head of your clan, and you dare to call other people traitors. You chose to replace my father with someone else? I, Lin Feng, have nothing to do with scum like you. There is only humiliation to gain from associating with you. I, Lin Feng, have returned. Lin Haoran, if you criticize my father again, I will kill you." When Lin Feng said those words, an immense quantity of sword qi whistled through the atmosphere. Lin Feng looked like a powerful sword at that moment. He was infinitely sharp, dazzling, brutal, and aggressive. Lin Feng surprisingly dared to threaten his third uncle, threatening to kill him. That was a huge humiliation for Lin Haoran, to be threatened by Lin Feng in public like that. He coldly said, "Your father is an animal, and the son of an animal is an animal, so you are both filthy animals." How could Lin Haoran be intimidated by a little boy to the extent that he wouldn't dare to speak? Boom! Lin Haoran's words reached Lin Feng's ears. An invisible pressure suddenly fell onto everyone's shoulders. Lin Feng was spinning around and seemed to have transformed into a sword, an extremely sharp one. An incredible sword energy overwhelmed the entire atmosphere. The crowd was gasping in astonishment. How powerful! It seemed like they had underestimated Lin Feng. He seemed to be much stronger than all of them. The invisible sword energy was surrounding the entire crowd. They were all fixedly staring at Lin Feng. He had become so monstrously strong. Lin Haoran's heart was pounding. Nobody knew that the energy which was now oppressing his body was painfully sharp. He was controlling himself, but his facial expression was changing drastically. His heart was pounding. Panic-stricken, he was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. How strong! That sword qi is way too strong. Lin Haoran thought. How strong had Lin Feng become? Lin Haoran was absolutely terrified and regretted what he just said to Lin Feng. "Die!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. The invisible sword energy turned into a sharp sword. Lin Feng jumped into the air. It seemed like his entire body transformed into a sword, an extremely sharp and devastating sword. The crowd was dumbstruck, to the extent that they forgot to try to stop Lin Feng. Even if they did see him coming, they couldn't afford to take the risk of getting in his way. An incredibly brilliant and resplendent light filled the atmosphere. There was no sword, only the light glow given from sword energy. Lin Haoran felt hopeless and his facial expression gradually dropped and blood started to pour from a hole that had been pierced between his eyebrows. One strike and his life had ended. As before, only one strike. Lin Feng moved back to his original position on the stage. There was nothing in his hand, but sword chi was still present in the atmosphere. That incredibly daring young man confused everyone in the crowd. Where was his sword? He was such a genius, yet he had been expelled from the clan. At that moment he had come back to regain his dignity. "You killed your third uncle?" said Lin Badao while looking at the corpse. He was looking at Lin Feng in an ice-cold way with killing intent in his eyes. "Third uncle?" said Lin Feng while laughing and then added, "Lin Badao, you and Lin Haoran, have you ever acted like my uncles?" Lin Badao was stupefied. He and Lin Haoran had indeed plotted against Lin Feng's father. Lin Feng had never been like a nephew for them. "You have never regarded me as your nephew. You always regarded me as a piece of trash and humiliated me. You expelled me from the clan and even tried to kill me. At that moment you never thought that you were my uncle, right? Now that I have killed him, you just now remember that he was my uncle? Lin Badao, don't you think that you are being ridiculous?" Lin Feng said mockingly and continued, "Besides, now I am no longer a member of the Lin clan. If anyone dares to insult my father, I will kill them." Once again, Lin Feng was openly threatening everyone. His words were extremely harsh. At that moment Lin Feng's words were like sharp swords. Amongst the people of the Lin clan, many were regretting that Lin Feng had been expelled from the clan. If he had been in the Lin clan, he would have been much more prestigious than Lin Qian. However, everybody remained silent. The atmosphere was horrifyingly silent. Lin Feng's expression looked like he wanted to burst into laughter. He said, "Now the cowardly atmosphere is contagious in the Lin clan. There is only a bunch of little people left who don't know how to do anything but unceasingly flatter Lin Badao, the clan head. None of you has any strength of character and the clan has no future. This is ridiculous and sad. Lin Badao, this is the result created from you becoming the clan head." When Lin Feng finished talking, everybody was astonished. They realized that what Lin Feng said was the truth. At that moment he was standing on the fighting stage and nobody could rival him. Everyone remained silent. If Lin Hai had been there, he would have been a source of inspiration, even though he did not show himself often. He didn't resemble Lin Badao. The people of the Lin clan, when they heard Lin Feng's making fun of them, all felt humiliated. "Lin Badao, in the past, you plotted against my father and me to make us leave the clan. Now I am back to reclaim our dignity and honor on the fighting stage. Lin Badao, can you act like a real man for once in your cowardly life and join me on the fighting stage?" Lin Feng was challenging Lin Badao. Lin Badao looked uncertain. Lin Feng, who had been expelled by him, surprisingly challenged him. How strong was he? The crowd looked at Lin Badao. Lin Badao slowly stood up, but suddenly heard Lin Qian shout, "Father, don't fight against him." The crowd was stupefied and looked at Lin Qian. They only saw Lin Qian was unceasingly shaking her head and stopping her father. Lin Qian wanted to prevent her father from fighting against Lin Feng? When Lin Feng arrived, he challenged Lin Qian. Lin Qian had not even considered fighting against Lin Feng. Could it be that she knew his real strength? Did Lin Qian know where Lin Feng had been this whole time? Did she also know his real strength? "Traitor!" shouted a voice which filled the atmosphere. A silhouette was rushing through the air. He looked majestic. Many people were delighted to see the silhouette appear. It was the respectable elder Lin Rui. In the past, he injured Lin Hai and also contributed to Lin Feng and Lin Hai's expulsion from the clan. Now he was showing himself again. Lin Feng was definitely going to die. Respectable elder. All the members of the Lin clan were slightly bowing in front of Lin Rui, who was descending from the sky. His voice was ice-cold and he said, "The son of the traitor has come back. Everybody hurry up and kill him. You have to kill any traitors that enter our territory." Everyone. They had to capture him together? The crowd was stupefied. Lin Badao, however, immediately nodded and said, "Members of the Lin clan, listen to the order, kill Lin Feng." When Lin Badao finished talking, many people started to reluctantly walk towards the fighting stage. Lin Feng glanced at the crowd and a demonic smile appeared on his face. Together? Everyone against him? So they wanted an unfair fight, right? At the Nalong clan, Lin Feng had not personally fought. Using his authority, he had controlled everything with only his words. However, he had gone to the Lin clan for a different reason. He wanted to regain his honor and dignity. This time he wanted to regain his honor on the fighting stage, not using his status and authority. But at the moment the Lin clan wanted to attack him, the whole clan against him. Lin Feng laughed, gazed towards the sky and shouted, "Order!" What's going on? What's going on? What's happening? The members of the Lin clan were stupefied. Suddenly they heard a rumbling noise fill the atmosphere. But it was coming from every direction. It seemed like there was an earthquake and the ground was trembling. Boom! 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 The incredibly loud booms filled the atmosphere. It seemed like the buildings were about to collapse from the vibrations. Someone was coming to attack the Lin clan. They were destroying the barricades in their district. The crowd was shaking. The sounds were moving closer with each second. The noises spread throughout the atmosphere along with the thumping of everyone's heartbeat. It sounded as if there was a stampede of thousands upon thousands of cavalry charging at full speed, and were approaching from the four corners of the Lin clan district. They immediately forced entry into the Lin clan's district and galloped towards the crowd. Respectable elder. The crowd looked around and looked at the majestic respectable elder. They were panicking. It seemed like an extremely heavy chi had fallen from the sky and landed on them. It was unceasing and getting nearer and nearer to the crowd. The crowd was in pain as the chi filling the atmosphere was so sharp that it could cut. They felt like they were suffocating under the intense pressure. The respectable elder Lin Rui was frowning. He could also feel the extremely strong chi moving towards them. Besides, he could tell that armored horses were charging towards them from all directions. How come so much cavalry were coming to the Lin clan? "Look over there," shouted someone in the crowd. The crowd looked at the north of the area. Immediately after, red silhouettes appeared in the distance. Red horses, red armor, how domineering and imposing. That was an entire army of Wuxia cavalry. They were charging towards them. The people's hearts were racing. The people of the Lin clan were dumbstruck. How was that possible? Why would an extremely strong army of armored cavalry come to the Lin clan? "There are some over there as well," shouted the terrified crowd. There was an army to the south as well. And over there. The Wuxia cavalry were coming from the east, from the west, from everywhere. Everybody was surrounded by Wuxia troops. It was an endless sea of red. It was a magnificent and terrifying sight. The people's heart were violently shaking. They were all suffering in silence. There was only the sound of the cavalry approaching. The crowd was just blankly staring at that whole scene. There were even some short moments when they had blackouts from the panic. That was an army, an extremely strong army. That army seemed to be endless, as if there were millions of them. Besides, all of them had piercingly strong gazes and released brutally strong chi. That army must be painted red from the blood of their enemies. When the crowd sensed the brutally strong chi, their hearts started beating even faster. A blood-red army had appeared at Lin clan during their annual meeting, and was encircling them. If the army wanted to annihilate the Lin clan, it would be as easy as wiping away dust. Who are they? Why has such a powerful army come to the Lin clan? Everybody was absolutely astonished. None of them thought that there could be a relation between the extremely strong army and the young man standing on the fighting stage. They didn't dare to think about such a terrifying thought, not even in their worst nightmares. Even though Lin Feng had just shouted order, they had already removed that from their minds. They had other things to worry about, and the crowd was completely focused on the powerful army. That strong and powerful army had encircled them. There were some horses moving out from the crowd. They were probably high-ranking personnel in the army. The members of the Lin clan were all moving aside, not daring to obstruct their path. They were surrounding the fighting stage, but they all gathered facing Lin Feng. Lin Feng raised his hands and the high-ranking personnel moved towards Lin Feng. "That fool, is he tired of living?" The crowd was cursing at Lin Feng in their hearts. He was surprisingly still standing on the stage. They just hoped that he wouldn't get involved. At that moment, The cavalry stopped at the edge of the fighting stage and glanced at the crowd. Immediately, everybody's heart started pounding. These people's facial expressions were so sharp and cold. They were all extremely strong cultivators. The weakest in the army were at the same level as an elder of the Lin clan. The ones in charge were even stronger. Lin Rui was also extremely strong. Amongst the army, there were at least 3 people who were of similar power or slightly weaker than him. Besides, if there was a battle, there was one person in the army that might be able to kill Lin Rui alone. The Qi Xie troops were releasing their powerful qi. These people were born from battles and frequently bathed in the blood of their enemies. They were fighting gods. They were much stronger than an ordinary army. They had incredible battle experience and they were a step above normal cultivators. You have come to my Lin clan today, however I don't know what we can do for you. But I will do my best to help you in any way possible. Lin Rui looked at the army and spoke with a very respectful tone. He had adopted the strategy of diplomacy. If he made them angry, they could annihilate the entire clan. It was better for him to stay humble. At that moment he was even bowing in an extremely respectful way. He was bowing the same way the people of the Lin clan had bowed to him previously. He seemed to be a different person when dealing with such a powerful army. However, the soldiers didn't pay attention to him. They didn't even spare him a glance. Immediately after, they jumped down from their horses, placed their hands on their chests and bowed while shouting in unison, "Officer! Officer? Where was the officer?" The crowd was stupefied. They looked around them like crazy and were looking for someone who looked like an officer of these powerful troops. Could it be that someone even stronger was about to arrive? Some small sound spread in the air. There were tens of thousands of soldiers here. Besides, what amazed the crowd was that some of them were kneeling on the ground. "Officer!" At that moment, a thunderous roar came from thousands of people shouting at the same time, and the ground shook from the entire army kneeling down. The entire army was all kneeling down and saluting. That was an amazing vision. In Shuiyu, people only had to kneel down only in front of the imperial family to pay respect. In front of others, a simple bow was sufficient. But the troops were kneeling down as a sign of devotion and respect for their officer. They had dedicated their lives to their officer. It was their way of honoring their officer. At that moment, the entire army was kneeling down facing the same direction, the fighting stage. The tens of thousands of Qi Xie soldiers were kneeling and their brains were all thinking at incredible speeds. But their hearts were moving much faster than their minds. Surprisingly, these soldiers were saluting their officer by kneeling down. The crowd was looking around yet they couldn't see anyone who looked like a battle-hardened officer. Finally, they looked in the direction that the soldiers were facing. They were all facing the fighting stage. Everybody was blinking as if they couldn't believe their eyes. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The crowd was finally looking at the young man standing on the fighting stage. Even though they had already guessed, nobody dared accept the truth they didn't want to. A gentle breeze was blowing which made Lin Feng's robe start to flutter. He then slightly raised his hand and said, "Everybody stand." "Roger, officer," said all the soldiers in unison, and they all moved to their feet in perfect synchronization. The people in the crowd felt like a dagger had just been plunged into their chest. They were shaking as if they were about to collapse. Lin Feng, it was Lin Feng. Surprisingly, it was actually Lin Feng. The crowd was dumbstruck. They couldn't believe their eyes. The one whom all the troops were kneeling down and saluting was surprisingly the only person standing on the fighting stage, Lin Feng. That was the young man whom they used to call a piece of trash and had expelled from the Lin clan. The crowd couldn't believe what was happening. Lin Rui groaned, his blood was boiling. He almost coughed a mouthful of blood. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. "Officer, how is such a thing possible?" thought Lin Rui, astonished. Lin Badao also couldn't believe it. The officer, surprisingly, was Lin Feng. They suddenly realized what was happening and what was about to happen. Lin Feng had come to the Lin clan to regain his honor, but he did not come alone. Cough, cough. Lin Badao was coughing up blood. He turned deathly pale. They were finished. This would be the end. Together, come onto the fighting stage and kill me. What are you waiting for? Together, come onto the fighting stage and kill me. What are you waiting for? Lin Feng was looking at the crowd while sounding cold and detached. The people of the Lin clan were shaking. Would they dare? Such a strong army just required a few seconds to annihilate the Lin clan and slaughter all of its members. Would they still dare to attack Lin Feng together? Respectable elder, you are very majestic. Originally, you gave the order for them to attack me in a group. Now you are standing there and doing nothing at all. What is that supposed to mean? Lin Feng was smiling mockingly. The respectable elder's face became rigid. His lips were shaking, but the words wouldn't come out. At that moment, everyone's lives were in Lin Feng's hands. Respectable elder, you are very strong. You attacked my father from behind and injured him in a single strike. You also expelled my father and I from the Lin clan. How domineering, how imposing. Now, I will give you an opportunity to show your invincible power to everybody again. When Lin Feng saw that Lin Rui was remaining silent, he continued talking. Back in the past, his father had displayed amazing power and strength. Nobody dared fight him to the extent that even the respectable elder Lin Rui had to personally appear to injure Lin Hai. After that, he had expelled them from the clan. How could Lin Feng forget Lin Rui? You expelled my father and me from the clan. When the crowd heard those words, they all looked puzzled. Indeed, the officer, who was controlling such a terrifying army, belonged to their clan, but he had been expelled. Lin Feng, while relying on his own strength, had become incredibly strong. He had easily killed the ninth elder and Lin Hao ran. Besides, he had also become the officer of the Qixia army. He was respected by thousands upon thousands of people. Even without mentioning the tiny little Lin clan, at that moment, Lin Feng could even annihilate the entire city of Yangzhou. But such an amazing genius had been expelled from the Lin clan. He was forced to leave. What sort of joke was that? However, that was the bitter reality, and it certainly saddened many of the clan members. Such geniuses appeared once every 1,000 years. But they expelled him and caused him to feel hatred towards the clan. If Lin Feng was in the clan, how prestigious would our clan be? Many people were trying to imagine what would have happened if Lin Feng hadn't been expelled from the Lin clan. With Lin Feng's current power, he had managed to obtain Yangzhou City, so if Lin Feng was still in their clan, it would mean that the entire city of Yangzhou would have belonged to the Lin clan. Their dream was to overtake the Nalan clan as the top clan in the city, but the task of making that dream come true had been assigned to Lin Qian. The Lin clan could have actually owned the entire city of Yangzhou. Compared to their dream, this was a much larger achievement. However, because of one wrong decision, they had taken the wrong path. Lin Rui was looking at Lin Feng yet remained silent. He had expelled Lin Feng from the clan. Was he blind? Since you're not talking at all, I will help you. I will give you two choices. The first one is you attempt to get onto the fighting stage together and see the result. The second choice is you and me battle. If you win, I will immediately withdraw the army from the Lin clan. When Lin Feng saw that Lin Rui remained uncommunicative, Lin Feng offered a choice which astonished the crowd. They wouldn't have thought that Lin Feng would give such a choice to Lin Rui. Lin Rui had the opportunity to defeat Lin Feng and make him withdraw the army. Lin Rui was the respectable elder of the Lin clan. He was extremely strong and was only a step away from breaking into the Xianqi layer. Each of his attacks were extremely powerful. Besides, how old was Lin Feng? Even though he was a genius, how could he fight against Lin Rui? Lin Feng is so young and proud. He refuses to back down because he is a genius. He already controls an entire army. That's why he acts so confident, thought the members of the Lin clan. In their eyes, Lin Feng was a genius, but he would never be able to defeat Lin Rui. Lin Rui was about 80 years old. How could he let a young boy defeat him? Lin Feng, are you joking? Lin Rui hadn't even spoken yet, and Lin Ba Dao had already interrupted. They were facing an incredible army, so none of them actually dared to think about fighting. If Lin Feng wanted them to die, they would die. Lin Ba Dao only hoped for one thing, that Lin Feng would withdraw the army. Lin Feng slowly turned around and looked at Lin Ba Dao. Lin Feng smiled as if he was going to mock them again. I'm sorry, Lin Ba Dao, included in my terms is one detail. No matter if I win or if Lin Rui wins, you Lin Ba Dao will die here. Lin Feng's voice wasn't loud, but Lin Ba Dao was astonished. His heart felt ice cold. Cold chi was emerging from his body. No matter who won the battle, Lin Ba Dao was going to die. Of course, I will give you an opportunity. If you manage to kill the respectable elder, I will forget about our past, said Lin Feng while laughing. Lin Badao was astonished. He immediately glanced at Lin Rui. Impossible. I, Lin Badao, am not that kind of person. Lin Rui is my elder. I would never attack him, said Lin Badao with a tone of morality and justice. His devotion to righteousness inspired reverence. All the people of the Lin clan were slightly nodding in agreement. At that moment an attack was cutting through the atmosphere. Lin Badao's hand was surrounded by a cold twinkling light. A dagger was rushing towards Lin Rui's back at full speed. It was a cold-blooded surprise attack aimed to kill Lin Rui. The crowd was stupefied. Lin Badao's words were still fresh in their minds, but he was already launching a sneak attack. He had proved his own hypocrisy. In order to save his own life, Lin Badao was ready to reveal his shameless nature. How dare you, shouted Lin Rui. At the moment when Lin Badao's dagger had almost reached Lin Rui released a piercingly cold ice energy as well as his spirit. In a flash, Lin Badao's dagger and hand were frozen solid. Die! The respectable elder's furious shout spread through the atmosphere. Lin Rui's palm reached Lin Badao's chest immediately after. He was covered with a layer of ice, as if he was about to be sealed within the ice. Old fool. Lin Feng was smiling coldly. Lin Badao had attacked, but Lin Rui retaliated at the exact same time. He had been protecting Lin Badao this whole time. On the path of cultivation there were too many people who, for their lives, were ready to sacrifice the people around them. Lin Rui had lived for almost 80 years. How could he believe the words which just left Lin Badao's mouth? Lin Badao, I have always been good to you and you dare to try and attack me by surprise. Don't blame for being rude now, said Lin Rui with killing intent in his voice. The piercingly cold energy emerging from his body was becoming more and more intense. No, father. Lin Rui, don't you dare. At that moment 2 people shouted furiously. It was Lin Qian and her brother. They both threw themselves at Lin Rui. Screw off. Lin Rui raised his hand and released his ice energy. How could he still care about Lin Qian at that moment? All he cared about was his own life. Die, shouted Lin Rui evilly. His ice energy was condensed into all of his attacks. Lin Badao was shaking, his body twitched twice. In a flash, the condensed ice energy burst forth and he was frozen to death. Lin Badao, because he wanted to become the head of the Lin clan, had unscrupulously employed unethical methods and plotted against members of his own family. In the end, the result was tragic. Father! Cried the 2 voices. Lin Rui was expressionless. He slowly turned around, he looked brutally cold. Was the Lin clan really a family? How could they kill each other so easily and without mercy? Lin Badao wanted to kill Lin Rui, but Lin Rui killed him. All these people were now showing their true colors and how treacherous they really were. Lin Rui looked at Lin Feng and jumped onto the fighting stage. He then said to Lin Feng, Lin Badao is dead. I killed him for you. Besides, Lin Feng, you are an outstanding genius. I admit that I was blind. Today let's fight. If I lose, I will accept my death. Lin Rui's words were inspiring and filled with a lofty and righteous aura. But Lin Feng didn't seem to care at all. What an old fool. Saying such nice things to try and awake some compassion in Lin Feng's heart. He had lived for so many years and was adept at scheming. He had cold-bloodedly killed Lin Badao without the slightest bit of hesitation. No need to say such flowery words. Don't worry, if you win, I will withdraw my army. If you lose, it is not that you will accept death, you will beg for it. Lin Feng sounded calm. He then added, all right, let's begin. I'm attacking, be careful, said Lin Rui while nodding. His ice spirit was invading the atmosphere with a powerful energy. The coldness was piercing to the bones. He took a step forwards and ice chi rushed towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng shook his head. They were fighting. Lin Rui didn't have to be so polite to him. Lin Feng moved his right foot forward and raised his arm with a fierce sword energy. At the moment when the sword energy was about to reach Lin Rui's body, Lin Feng slashed his hand down. A hero at dusk under the setting sun, the brilliance was slowly fading. When Lin Rui saw Lin Feng's hand, he felt like he was seeing an illusion. He had the feeling that the sun was starting to set. Sword of the setting sun. Lin Feng had used his hand as the sword. His hand cut through the atmosphere. Blood sprayed into the air and Lin Rui's arm was sent flying through the air. One strike was enough to remove one of Lin Rui's arms. When the crowd saw that arm flying in the air, they were astonished once again. When the crowd saw that arm flying in the air, they were astonished once again. That attack didn't diffuse resplendent light. They hadn't even seen a sword. Lin Feng's sword was his hand. His entire body was a sword. It was a sword without brightness and splendor. In a short time, Lin Feng surprisingly had become extremely strong. Even the respectable elder couldn't rival him anymore. He hadn't even been able to withstand a single attack. Lin Rui had the strength of the 9th Ling Qi layer. He just needed one more step to reach the Xian Qi layer. But what was Lin Feng's level? Lin Feng was only 17 years old and was young like many of the juniors of the Lin clan. But the people of the Lin clan always relied on their parents and on the clan. Lin Feng was absolutely different from the others because he was already extremely strong and already controlled an army. That was a huge difference, and the young people of the Lin clan would be unable to catch up with him. That young man who had been expelled from the Lin clan was already above their entire clan, and made them prostrate themselves before him. Ah! Lin Rui gave a horrible shriek. He raised his remaining arm and released all the ice chi that he could, not hesitating and putting everything into his attack. But Lin Feng moved again. He was quick and agile. He seemed moved in fusion with the earth. He looked mysterious. A light flashed immediately. Lin Rui's hand slightly touched Lin Feng's shoulder and ice started to appear. But then Lin Feng slightly moved his hand and a sword light filled the atmosphere. Slash! Lin Feng's hand slashed like a meteor. Blood sprayed and filled the air. Lin Rui's other arm had just been cut off. Lin Feng had cut it off as easily as the first arm. Lin Feng was much stronger than Lin Rui. Lin Feng dashed past Lin Rui, and at that moment, he was behind Lin Rui's back. Lin Feng's hand had pierced his back and he looked calm and peaceful. Ah! A cry of agony spread in the air. Lin Rui had the impression that the world around him was vibrating. His body was violently shaking. Blood didn't stop flowing onto the ground, but Lin Rui's heart felt even more painful than his arms, which had been cut off. If Lin Feng didn't kill him, he crippled his cultivation. Respectable elder, back in the past, you were very strong and controlled everything. You could do whatever you wished. You expelled my father and me from the clan. You chose a new clan head. You attacked and hurt my father. Now I came back and I am stronger than you, therefore I now control everything. I can now do as I wish. If I want to cut your arms off, I can. If I want to kill you, I can. Lin Feng's voice was coming from Lin Rui's back. These words were the harsh reality. Strength was the most important thing in that world. If one was strong, one had power over weaker people and could thus do as they wished. Lin Rui used to have the advantage. He had injured Lin Feng's father and had expelled him. Now Lin Feng was stronger than him and had easily cut off his arms. Who could do anything against that? If he wanted to cripple anyone's cultivation, he could. If he wanted to kill anyone, he could. Lin Rui's heart was bleeding. At that moment, his heart was filled with venom, but his mouth was firmly closed. He didn't dare say anything to Lin Feng. Lin Feng was right. In that world, the strong could control everything. If Lin Rui wanted to stay alive, he had to keep his mouth shut. Even if he hated Lin Feng, becoming a cripple is still better than dying. Lin Rui was already old and cherished life. He didn't want to die. Lin Rui, today I will have mercy on you and will not kill you. You are now half dead. I cut off your arms because of what you did in the past. Now you need to vanish from my sight. If someday you have the possibility of getting your revenge, come at me, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. No matter what his status was in that world, all that mattered was strength. Lin Rui was shaking. He turned around and looked at Lin Feng. Immediately after, he started walking and slowly left. He looked lonely and desolate. That was the price he had to pay for having made such a grave mistake in the past. After Lin Rui left, Lin Feng gazed into the distance and then looked at the Great Elder and the Third Elder. He said, sounding cold and indifferent, Great Elder, Third Elder, you too can cripple your own cultivation. Don't make me do it personally, otherwise, there will be an extra fee of 2 arms. Lin Feng sounded calm and serene while the 2 elders were deathly pale. They should have expected it. Lin Feng was getting his revenge for all the bad things they had all done to him in the past. Back then they kept humiliating Lin Feng, forced him to leave. These 2 people had been Lin Badao's accomplices. That's why Lin Feng wanted to make them cripple their own cultivation. When the great elder saw the armless silhouette in the distance, he suddenly burst into an insane laughter. Immediately after, he moved his hand and bombarded his own cultivation. He groaned and blood gushed from his mouth. He had crippled his own cultivation. The third elder was shaking. He was slowly and hesitantly moving his hand, but not attacking. Third elder, if you don't want to die, cripple your own cultivation immediately, said the great elder, sounding tense. The third elder was shaking even more. He glanced at the great elder and crippled his own cultivation as well. The head of the clan, Lin Ba Dao, had died. The third uncle, Lin Hao Ran, had died. The ninth elder had died. The respectable elder no longer had arms. The great elder and third elder had crippled their own cultivation. Lin Feng had come back and spread terror amongst people's hearts. Lin Feng was standing on the fighting stage and looking at the crowd, sounding indifferent. He said, "All others, I will not touch you, even if you hate me, that is, of course, providing that you behave properly. Of course, if you want to get your revenge, you can also come and find me. The best thing is for you to think carefully about your future, though." When Lin Feng finished talking, he turned around and moved down from the stage. He raised his hand. In a flash, the myriad of troops climbed onto their horses. They were a perfectly trained elite army. Lin Feng and the troops were making history together. Lin Feng also jumped onto his horse that was brought. He looked domineering. "Let's go," said Lin Feng, sounding indifferent. At that moment, a voice spread in the atmosphere. "Wait, wait." When Lin Feng heard that voice, he stopped but didn't turn around. He just waited for the other person to talk. "Lin Feng, will you consider coming back to the Lin clan?" said a hopeless-sounding voice which made everybody else shiver and look towards Lin Feng. Indeed, would Lin Feng ever return to the Lin clan? If Lin Feng accepted to go back to the Lin clan, not only would it give him nothing, but it would give incredible prestige to the Lin clan. It would make them become one of the most prestigious clans in the entire region. That hopeless voice was resonating in people's hearts, but nobody dared speak. The same person spoke again. "If you are willing to come back to the Lin clan, we can make all those who opposed you in the past leave the clan, including Lin Qian." The person spoke again because they had seen that Lin Feng remained silent. The whole crowd was quiet. Indeed, if Lin Feng accepted, they could forget about Lin Qian just like they did to Lin Feng in the past. Back in the past, they had chosen the proud and arrogant Lin Qian, who couldn't rival with Lin Feng any longer. Lin Qian looked at Lin Ba Dao's corpse and felt extremely sad. She used to be the pride of the Lin clan. Even in Yangzhou City, many people respected her. But because of Lin Feng, her glory had been destroyed. Lin Feng was much more prestigious than her. Lin Qian could still vaguely remember when she had gone to the Yunhai sect and humiliated Lin Feng while looking down on him, but all of this was already the past. "Back in the past, when I was expelled from the Lin clan, nobody said a word. Now that you see that I am strong and have a high status and you want me to come back to the clan, is that even possible? There are some things which cannot be taken back." Lin Feng was on his horse. He didn't even turn around to look at them. Immediately after, he left at full speed with his horse emitting whistling sounds through the atmosphere. The myriad of Qi Xie troops seemed to be flying. The ground was shaking along with people's hearts. The Lin clan were all looking at the leaving silhouettes. Their hearts were filled with mixed feelings. Some things could not be taken back. Lin Feng was right. When everybody kept humiliating him, who had said a word? Who spared even a single word to help Lin Feng? When the Lin clan wanted to kill Lin Feng, who had said anything to try and save him? These days, Lin Feng was extremely strong and was the officer of a huge army. Only now they wanted him to go back to the clan. Was that even possible? They could never get back what they threw away and discarded, never. At the end of the year, Yangzhou City was always extraordinarily lively. On the road, people were standing around in small groups. At the end of the year, Yangzhou City was always extraordinarily lively. On the road, people were standing around in small groups. At that moment in Yangzhou City, there was a majestic army composed of Qi Xie armored cavalry. They were making an inspection tour of the city. All of them looked domineering and imposing. Everybody was looking at them with a deep respect. The Qi Xie troops are extremely majestic. It is said that they are all elite soldiers. Now they are in our city. On the road, the Wuxia horses were trotting. The crowd was looking at these majestic horses. Some people were talking about them. That is an honor for our city. Now that the Wuxia troops are here, we are incredibly prestigious within the entire region. Who will dare provoke us? You're right, last year I had the chance to see the Wuxia officer with my own eyes. He was only about 16 years old, but at the annual cultivation meeting of Yangzhou City, he had displayed incredible abilities. He was much stronger than Na Lanfeng or Lin Qian. They couldn't even withstand a single attack. At that moment, I already knew that the officer would become an incredible person. I just wouldn't have thought that it would happen in such a short period of time, said a man with a long mustache. He sounded so proud that it made people around him feel exasperated. 1 year before, there had been a young man at the cultivation meeting of Yangzhou City, but the members belonging to the biggest clans had attacked him and forced him to escape. 1 year later, that young man had become more mature, more determined and extremely strong. He looked extremely majestic and imposing on his horse, controlling several thousand soldiers. He had returned to Yangzhou City as a glorious young hero. Since that moment, the 4 big clans of Yangzhou City had sunk to new lows. There was only Lin Feng controlling a military government. He had replaced the former government and shut out the clans from city affairs. But the people were excited and delighted by all of this. They had heard that Lin Feng wanted to build a Wuxia castle and take measures to make Yangzhou City grow more influential. Yangzhou people were, of course, happy because they would be able to enjoy more benefits, including benefits for their practice of cultivation. At that moment, the government infrastructure was in constant change. The Wuxia troops were busy enlarging the government palace. Within 1 day, all the walls surrounding the government had been destroyed. At that moment, Lin Feng was standing in an underground passage. While looking at the tunnel, Lin Feng looked pensive. The Wuxia troops had just finished digging this passageway, and it was pitch dark. Strong as they were, they had already done half of the work for him. Since Lin Feng had become the officer of such powerful soldiers, he of course used them to accomplish difficult tasks. His silhouette flickered and he disappeared down the passageway. After a short moment, he appeared in the middle of a room. In front of him was a huge table. Standing on the left and right of the table there were 3 silhouettes. They looked pensive. These 3 people were the former middle, left and right officers Ren Qingquang, Feng Yuhan and Lei Qingtian. They all used to have their own armies, but now they were assisting Lin Feng and staying by his side. Lin Feng, look, we are here we can dig a river. Then we can build towers on these 8 strategic locations. The government building is in a valley, so even people of the Shanxi layer come. In normal circumstances we should be able to defeat them. Feng Yuhan sounded full of confidence. The Wuxia troops were elite soldiers. Ren Qingquang was an expert at planning and defensive military strategy. The left officer, Feng Yuhan, was an expert at organizing military formations and offensive strategies. The right officer, Lei Qingtian, was an expert at organizing a geographical strategy and modifying terrain to protect the troops. They were all extremely skilled officers. Obviously, controlling such a huge army required them to divide the tasks. All these officers had their own tasks to fulfill. Lin Feng was carefully observing the table. He slightly nodded and said, "Uncle Feng, you can reorganize the city as you wish. I just need you to help me build a secret underground city." Constructing an underground city will not be difficult now because the troops are extremely happy to follow your orders. However, the imperial city will not help us again. We have to rely on ourselves. If we spend too much time and money on all of this, it might become complicated. Besides, the troops could also lose their enthusiasm over time. Lin Feng slightly nodded. That was indeed a problem. Currently, the troops were in a perfect state of mind. Even if they accepted to help and invest from their own pocket, that wasn't a solution for the long term. An army was extremely strong but also required a lot of things. They required pills, purity stones, weapons, armor and battle horses. Besides, constructing all these things in Yangzhou City also required a colossal amount of resources. I understand. I will find a solution for all of this, said Lin Feng. Immediately after, he looked at Ren Qingquang and Lei Qingtian and said, "Uncle Ren, you can take care of the weapons and constructions. Uncle Lei, you can take care of the guards and protection of the city. You are all working very hard, thank you." All right. Don't worry, I can do it. The two officers replied to Lin Feng. These days, Yangzhou City was Lin Feng's fief. He could not let the army suffer. He had to make his army become even stronger and expand his power. He still remembered the memories from the strong cultivator. They were all extremely valuable and precious memories with vast knowledge. Sooner or later, the city of Yangzhou would rise and draw the attention of the entire country. Lin Feng didn't intend to go back to the imperial city in the following months. He wanted to concentrate his attention on Yangzhou City. Uncles, you are all working very hard, thank you. Lin Feng looked grateful. These three people used to be officers in these days. They were following and assisting him. That would always remain engraved in Lin Feng's memory. Lin Feng, the three of us, as well as Zhou Qixia, followed the general even at the cost of our lives. Now the general's heart had died with Zhou Qixia. The three of us, in short, are willing to help you because the general trusts you with the future of the army, and because of that we trust you too. Ren Qingquang was looking at Lin Feng and his eyes were filled with hope. Lin Feng was extremely frivolous and had dared to kill Duan Tianlang's son, Duan Han, for Lu Tsonglan. If Lin Feng didn't become extremely powerful, the three of them would give up because it was clear to them that these days, Lu Tsonglan's heart was no longer the same. He didn't have the same ambition as he used to. If they were on Lu Tsonglan's side, there wouldn't be much to do. Therefore, they had listened to Lu Tsonglan and had decided to follow Lin Feng and help him achieve his ambitions. Only they could understand the glory of such things. Lin Feng understood that as well, which is why he had to be extremely ambitious. In a clean and tidy room, all the furniture was brand new. Lin Feng pushed the door and entered that room. There was a gorgeous silhouette sluggishly lying on a bed and looking at the ceiling. It was impossible to say what that person was thinking. Meng Qing looked at Lin Feng and then turned around again. She looked as cold as before. Lin Feng smiled wryly. How come he hadn't managed to make her heart melt yet? But it was also very clear to Lin Feng that these days, he could freely enter Meng Qing's room. That was already a good thing. If it had been someone else, that person would probably have been frozen stiff by Meng Qing. Only Lin Feng could go into her room. Lin Feng walked towards Meng Qing and spoke in a low voice. What are you thinking about? Meng Qing slightly shook her head and said, Nothing. Lin Feng got closer to the bed and slowly sat down. Meng Qing moved her legs away, allowing Lin Feng to sit down. Are you thinking about me? Asked Lin Feng with a smile on his face. But Meng Qing was just calmly looking at him coldly, which made Lin Feng's face become rigid. That girl was way too difficult to understand. Meng Qing, still lying on the bed, looked at the ceiling again, ignoring Lin Feng. Lin Feng slightly moved closer to Meng Qing, which made her move back a bit more. She was staring at Lin Feng approaching. She then glared as if she was looking at a dangerous enemy. Lin Feng scratched his head and kept approaching Meng Qing, which finally made her react. She was blinking nervously. Can I hug you? Said Lin Feng while looking at that breathtaking beauty. Only if you do it without speaking, said Meng Qing. Lin Feng had anticipated that reply and was already hugging her, pushing her head onto his chest. Meng Qing and Lin Feng were locked in an embrace. Meng Qing was shaking from head to toe. She had no strength anymore. She couldn't do anything but follow Lin Feng's movements and lean on his chest. Meng Qing and Lin Feng were locked in an embrace. Meng Qing was shaking from head to toe. She had no strength anymore. She couldn't do anything but follow Lin Feng's movements and lean on his chest. Meng Qing raised her head and looked at Lin Feng. Their faces were very close. At that moment, something very rare happened. Emotion flashed through Meng Qing's eyes and she looked shy. Her pure and holy face suddenly turned red, which made Lin Feng's heartbeat accelerate. Let me go. Surprisingly, Meng Qing was struggling to move away from Lin Feng, but he was holding her too tightly. Very quickly, she stopped struggling and lowered her head, not daring to look at Lin Feng's scorching hot eyes. Lin Feng smiled. That girl was cold, but she still listened to Lin Feng. I like holding you, said Lin Feng while smiling. Meng Qing slowly turned her head around and raised it while looking at Lin Feng. Her eyes betrayed her at that moment. Meng Qing then calmed down and laid against Lin Feng's chest again. Lin Feng was hugging her and she was feeling calm and at ease. It was such a perfect moment. That short moment seemed like an eternity. Lin Feng was tightly holding on to that absolutely gorgeous young woman. His heart was beating quickly. She was enchanting. However, Lin Feng was not thinking of the act between a man and a woman, but was still feeling a strange warmth rising within him. Mengqing, look at me. After being silent for a while, Lin Feng spoke. Mengqing, who was lying on Lin Feng's chest, raised her head and looked at Lin Feng. She looked a bit surprised. You truly are beautiful, said Lin Feng while smiling. Mengqing felt unfamiliar emotions. She looked shy again. Every girl liked it when the person they loved thought they were beautiful. Mengqing, even though she was an unusual girl, was, after all, still a girl. She also understood the feelings of love and hatred. Once a girl fell in love with a boy, she wouldn't be that different from the others. Everyone became a child when in love. Lin Feng was lowering his head, getting nearer and nearer to Mengqing's face. Mengqing looked extremely embarrassed. She was shaking and her heart was pounding. She wanted to escape, but at the same time, she didn't want to go anywhere. Finally, Lin Feng pressed his lips against her lips. Mengqing was shaking. It was like an electric shock. Her eyes were wide open. Her face was rigid. She didn't know what was happening, but it felt right. They didn't kiss for a very long time before Lin Feng moved his head back and looked at Mengqing. He smiled at her in a very sweet way. Mengqing looked at Lin Feng and saw that he was smiling. She looked extremely shy. She didn't dare look at him. She had the feeling that she was drowning in emotion. She was extremely shy and nervous. Actually, Lin Feng was nervous too. It was the first time that he had fallen in love with someone. It was also the first time that he embraced and kissed a girl. How could he not be nervous? Even though he could use his sword and remain calm in the middle of a bloodbath, when it came to girls, Lin Feng was very nervous. Maybe he lacked experience. Mengqing, have a good rest, said Lin Feng while standing up and looking at Mengqing. Immediately after, he turned around and started to leave. After Lin Feng left, Mengqing raised her head. She was excited and embarrassed at the same time. She sat down and put her hands on her knees. She looked pensive. She wanted to remember a smile. In her thoughts slowly appeared a smile, a warm smile. 3 months later, many things had been constructed in Yangzhou City. There were vast new buildings that had been constructed. Besides, there were also 8 huge towers which were a few hundred meters high, and when looking up at them they seemed to reach the stars. Besides, the old government building had become the headquarters for the new government. It was much more extravagant than in the past. Besides, it was very lively inside and there were things constantly going on. However, the people didn't know what was happening there apart from the fact that the government was undergoing reconstruction. In an underground place, Lin Feng was sitting cross-legged, motionless. At that moment, Lin Feng had the feeling that he had reached an extremely high level of earth fusion. In his mind, there was a dark world in which a myriad of bright lights were flashing. These lights were all in different corners, seeming unorganized. These disorderly and unsystematic lights seemed like they had been put there randomly, but actually, when looking at them from the right angle, one could notice a special form. It looked mysterious. Many surplus souls were moving towards these lights, and finally, a strength attracted them. A light appeared between 2 lights and all of the lights seemed to be fused into a shape. The dark atmosphere slowly became brighter. Immediately after the lights appeared, the lights were getting more and more intense in that dark atmosphere. They were gathering together, making the dark atmosphere extremely bright and even dazzling. The lights were also moving faster and faster. The lights were slowly adopting a peculiar shape, the shape of 9 palaces. In Shuiyu, cultivators of the Xianqi layer were considered as extremely strong cultivators because they could control and condense qi from the world to transform it into pure qi that could be used, thus benefiting from its strength. Each thread of pure qi contained a colossal amount of strength. At the same time, cultivators of the Xianqi layer could also gradually learn how to control the strength of their soul, which helped them concoct pills and increase the power of pills, weapons, and their attacks. Besides, before breaking through to the Xianqi layer, even though some people could use various strong methods, they still couldn't benefit from the strength of the soul, which strongly limited their abilities. Every cultivator of the Xianqi layer had a few basic cultivation techniques. At least they all practiced until they could perfectly control pure qi. There wasn't a single one of them who couldn't control it. However, pure qi control could be stronger or weaker. There could be large quantities and small quantities controlled by the cultivator. Weak pure qi control only enabled the cultivator to condense pure qi a little bit quicker. However, the strength was limited. Strong pure qi control enabled cultivators to unceasingly use stronger pure qi, but it required more time. At that moment, Lin Feng was practicing his pure qi condensation. Even though Lin Feng had a lot of purity stones, it wasn't enough to supply his army. Therefore, the thing was to provide his army with the best cultivation practices in order to save the use of purity stones. At the moment, he was still in fusion with the earth. Lin Feng's eyes were closed. His consciousness was in a world filled with darkness and bright lights. His mouth moved. He then immediately said, "Condense." At that moment, Lin Feng was insanely shaking. He groaned. His eyes slightly opened. Lin Feng coughed and raised his head. He looked around him. There were dazzling lights surrounding him and they were slowly condensing. When the last light was fused with the others, an incredibly dazzling aura appeared. There were 9 palaces and they started absorbing the pure qi of heaven and earth. Lin Feng couldn't bear the pain, but the shapes that appeared made him smile. The 9 small palaces of qi condensation, what a powerful technique. Lin Feng could feel the pure qi from the earth starting to gravitate towards him. The cultivation towers of the Celestial Academy provided incredible amounts of pure qi. The pure qi would be drawn towards the tower and would fill the rooms for cultivation practice. Lin Feng was now also able to condense pure qi. These 9 small palaces were already extremely powerful. The knowledge that the cultivator of the Zunqi layer transmitted to me is, as expected, extraordinary. I have now been learning surplus souls and can make 100 surplus souls appear. My soul has also become much stronger, coupled with earth fusion. If I didn't have all these things, I wouldn't be able to condense qi to such a degree, whispered Lin Feng. His extremely strong soul was giving him the chance to become much stronger. The surplus souls technique as well as the earth fusion had been indispensable to him when it came to condensing pure qi. A moment before, people in the government building were stupefied. Above them in the sky there was a pattern that appeared. It looked like 9 palaces, but then in the blink of an eye they disappeared again. They had just sensed the pure qi as if all the qi of heaven and earth was moving towards them. At the same time, around the government building, many people were stupefied as well. They had also sensed the pure qi emerging from the earth, as if there had been a strange strength absorbing the powerful pure qi of heaven and earth. Only an extremely strong cultivator of the Xianqi layer could have managed to condense pure qi like that. After the people sensed the qi, they all looked in the same direction, the government building. 2 months after, the government buildings looked completely different. It was like a new small city was built within the city of Yangzhou. 2 months after, the government buildings looked completely different. It was like a new small city was built within the city of Yangzhou. The government area was much bigger than before. There were palaces, pavilions, and even a castle within the area. It looked majestic and it gave the feeling of power and military might. Besides, it seemed like it was still not complete. They hadn't constructed any ramparts yet as they were still expanding outwards and reconstructing. Apart from the Qixia troops who were constructing things within the government area, there were other people as well. There were some people who had been hired to help and some others who were working as volunteers. At that moment in Yangzhou City, everybody wanted to go to the government area and were happy to do some manual labor because there was an incredible quantity of pure qi that seemed to be gathered there, which meant that it was an extremely beneficial place for cultivators. On the path of cultivation, the pure qi of heaven and earth could alter bones, flesh, blood, and improve cultivation. A cultivator would have never refused an environment rich in pure qi. Besides, in Yangzhou City, there weren't many people who had purity stones. Those who practiced cultivation using purity stones lived a life of luxury. Ordinary people could only absorb the pure qi of heaven and earth which was present in the atmosphere. However, these days, the government area was filled with pure qi in which the manual workers could bathe all day while working. Then, in the evening they could practice cultivation in the outer area. The government area was already divided into an inner government area and an outer area. The inner government area could be accessed only by Qixia soldiers, the core members of the government. It was strictly prohibited for other people to enter it. If someone tried to enter it, they would be executed on the spot. At that moment, some silhouettes were passing through the door of which led from the inner government area to the outer area. They were Wuxia troops galloping at full speed while creating a hurricane of dust. In a flash they had left. Officer Lin Feng is such a heroic and majestic young man. Indeed, as he's as young as the rumors said. It's such an honor to be able to see Officer Lin Feng. Outside, there was a lively crowd who saw the Wuxia horses pass by. Their eyes were alight with excitement. These days in Yangzhou City, Lin Feng had become a legend, a myth. His name was on everybody's lips. Seeing Lin Feng was for them an honor. Besides, even though Lin Feng was the Marquis of Yangzhou, they liked to call him Officer Lin Feng even more. The term officer was majestic and imposing. It perfectly corresponded with Lin Feng's status. By the way, have you ever seen the officer's girlfriend? She wears a fine veil just like a celestial being. Of course I have seen her. Even though we can't see her face, I can guess that she's an exceptional woman. The officer couldn't be with a girl who doesn't match him. They definitely suit each other. People were making various comments. At that moment, Lin Feng's horse had already rushed past. Mengqing, everybody is saying that you are my girlfriend, said Lin Feng on his horse while glancing at Mengqing who was galloping next to him. Lin Feng was smiling. He had clearly heard what these people were saying. Mengqing glanced at Lin Feng but didn't say anything. But Lin Feng kept smiling wholeheartedly. In the past, Mengqing used to be ice-cold and expressionless. These days, she was at least looking at him, which could be considered as an improvement. A group of Wuxia horses were leaving the government area. And then immediately they left Yangzhou City as well, galloping towards an ancient road. Celestial River was an ancient city with a history which dated back to millions of years. That majestic ancient city, even though it had gone through the challenges of time, still had the atmosphere of an ancient city. At the entrance gate, there was an incredibly artistic ferocious beast carved into the stone. It was a legendary wild beast, a phoenix. There was fire was burning on the back of its wings. That beast was filled with ancient qi. Celestial River also had another nickname, Phoenix City. Celestial River was situated in the middle of the Shuiyu country. It was surrounded by what seemed to be an endless desert. When one stretched one's eyes as far as one could see, there was nothing but yellow sand. However, that geographical position didn't affect the development of the city, which was a huge trading center, one of the biggest in Shuiyu. The city was filled with flourishing businesses of all sorts, including fields of real estate and different trade industries. Local people were very rare. Since the beginning of time, Celestial River had been a city in which people came to carry out transactions and find the objects they desired the most. With time, the local population had almost gone extinct and most of the population was businesses. There was a saying in Shuiyu which said, "If you need something, you will find it at Celestial River." In Celestial River, the average quantity of extremely strong cultivators was also higher than the national average, to the extent that it had some of the strongest cultivators of the country. Those who didn't have a high cultivation were embarrassed to go there, considering they would encounter strong cultivators on frequent occasions. On the street, when a person saw another unknown cultivator, maybe he was a cultivator of the Lingqi layer or even of the Xianqi layer, that contributed to making the city even more appealing. At that moment, outside of Celestial River, a group of Wuxia horses were galloping on the yellow sand surrounded by a cloud of yellow dust. They were galloping towards Celestial River. That group was composed of only 3 people, Lin Feng and 2 others. Lin Feng and Mengqing were galloping at the front and Ba Dao, who was wearing a mask and following them. These days Ba Dao seemed introverted. He was also able to better control his aggressiveness and his temper. Mengqing, Celestial River carries out very liberal politics. You can enter as you wish. However, inside it can be perilous. People are cruel and merciless. A person should not hide their presence or they may be attacked by others, said Lin Feng to Mengqing. Mengqing's lifestyle used to be completely different, so Lin Feng was doing his best to tell her as many things as possible. All right, said Mengqing while slightly nodding. Lin Feng turned his head and looked in front of him. Coming from the left, 2 armored horses were rushing into the city before them. 2 cultivators of the 9th Lingqi layer, whispered Ba Dao behind Lin Feng and Mengqing. Lin Feng was stupefied. As expected, the rumors about Celestial River were true. At that moment, they were rushing through the yellow desert, then arrived on a road made of bluestone leading towards the city gate. But at the same time, Two silhouettes descended from the air, landing under the Phoenix City Gate, blocking their way. Lin Feng, Ba Dao and Meng Qing reined in their horses, which started trotting and eventually came to a stop. They looked at the two silhouettes who were in front of them. They were two men who were about 30 years old. One of them looked ice-cold and dark, while the other had an evil smile on his face. These people were definitely not here with good intentions. "What do you want?" said Lin Feng, sounding cold. "Every person who wishes to enter the city must pay a fee of 10 purity stones of medium quality, which means that you three have to pay 30 purity stones in total. 300 purity stones of lower quality would be fine as well," said the one who was smiling evilly. Lin Feng frowned. "Celestial River is the city of freedom. You can enter and leave as you wish. Since when do you have to pay a tax? Besides, even if there was a tax, why would I give it to you?" said Lin Feng, sounding detached. "Because I say so. So no need to speak nonsense," said the evil-looking person furiously when he heard Lin Feng. Lin Feng's facial expression turned ice-cold. A moment ago, two people had entered the city and these two didn't stop them. When they arrived, these people came down. They most probably thought that they were weak. As expected, Celestial River was a heaven for strong cultivators and hell for weak ones. "What if I don't give you anything?" said Lin Feng, sounding indifferent. "If you don't give me anything," said the man with the evil smile. Even though Celestial River was full of extremely strong cultivators, not all of them were strong. Lin Feng was very young and had high natural talent, but how strong could young cultivators be when compared to their elders? Young people like Lin Feng were the favorite targets of these two men. They were always stationed above the city gate and stealing purity stones. It was extremely easy to get purity stones because people who came to Celestial River often had all their money to purchase goods. "If you don't give it, you will die," said the one with the evil smile on his face. He released some deadly qi. "Sacrificing 3 lives for 30 purity stones of medium quality, are you sure that it is the right decision?" asked the one with the evil smile. His qi was getting denser and denser. "No need, I'm sure," said Lin Feng while turning around and moving his horse forwards. These two men smiled coldly and said, "Do you think that you can just leave like that?" But at the moment they finished talking, Ba Dao rushed over to them, releasing a terrifying qi. At that moment, Ba Dao's qi turned into blade energy. It was extremely sharp and ice-cold. At that moment, these two men's facial expressions changed drastically. His blade qi was extremely powerful. There was also blade force. Besides, that qi had the force was at the 7th qi layer, which was the same level as theirs. "Die," said Ba Dao. In these two men's eyes, an expression of hopelessness appeared. A bright, resplendent and dazzling light cut through the air and removed their heads from their body. Ba Dao remained expressionless. "Let's go," said Lin Feng, and the 3 people entered Celestial River. At that moment in the distance there were a few silhouettes, 2 boys and 1 girl. When they saw these 2 heads fly away, they took a deep breath. "What a strong and powerful blade," said the girl in a low voice. These 3 people had arrived in Celestial River earlier, but because of these 2 people, they hadn't dared enter the city and were trying to hide in the distance. Ba Dao had immediately killed the 2 men. "Who's the person who's wearing the mask? He should already be a master of blade force. I heard that the 2nd core disciple of the Hao Yu clan, the Blade Master, was also coming to Celestial River. Could that be him?" whispered the girl. The 2 boys on her side said, "If he is the Blade Master, who are the 2 others?" The young girl shook her head, indicating that she didn't know either. Immediately after, these 3 people entered Celestial River. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.